Hey, I'm Alex, and welcome to Hallucination. If you love true horror stories, consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. The stories you'll hear are shared by our audience from Reddit, and to keep their original essence, I read them exactly as they were written. Before we begin, let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from? Also, check the timestamps in the comments for story titles and easy navigation. Now, let's dive into the darkness. I became a watcher, and this is my journey. I'm writing this from an old dusty computer. I don't even know if this will work, but since I'm down here for the rest of my life, I might as well make use of my free time. There's no signal, no Wi-Fi, no internet browser I can find. Just a black terminal window with a blinking green cursor, and somehow, Reddit is the only site I can access. Don't ask me how. If I had to guess, it's part of the design. This place is called the Witness Room. That's not official. It's just what I started calling it after I figured out what it does. If you read this far and this actually posts, then I guess the room wants you to see this. I didn't fall into a portal. I didn't get abducted by aliens. I wasn't sleepwalking or drugged or anything else that makes this easier to explain. I was just at home, sitting on the floor, staring at the wall, thinking about how I hadn't done anything useful with my life. And then I blinked, and I was here. There was one door. Don't ask, I've already tried everything to open it. No windows, no bed, no toilet, just concrete walls, stale air, a massive black screen embedded in the wall in front of a single plastic chair, and a metal desk with a computer in front of it. No lights I could see, but the room was dimly lit anyway. It's always the same level of light, no matter how long I wait. No shadows, just a dull gray atmosphere, like the inside of a mausoleum. The screen turned on by itself, and it showed me. Not just me standing there, but me before for moments in my life. A camera angle over my shoulder at my 10th birthday party. A shot from my college dorm window zoomed in through the blinds. One clip was from inside my own living room, showing me watching TV last week. I never noticed the camera, because there wasn't one. And then the screen started showing people. People watching me, not metaphorically, literally. In every clip there's someone watching. Sometimes it's obvious. A man staring at me from a coffee shop booth across the street. A woman in an elevator, pretending to scroll through her phone. Other times it's subtle, just a figure in the background of a reflection. A shadow under the bed that doesn't belong to anyone. At first I thought I had absolutely lost my mind or fell asleep and ended up in a nightmare. But I have been here a long time. I don't know how long, but definitely years. The screen showed me things that could not have been coincidences. A moment when I was 9, playing in my backyard, and someone was standing behind our shed, just staring. A moment when I was dirty from soccer practice and taking a shower. A moment when I was graduating high school. The moment I got divorced. The moment I lost my child. It never stopped. It just kept going, showing me more clips. Years and years of moments when I was being watched and never knew it. And now, I think I'm the one watching. Don't ask how I eat, sleep, or use the bathroom. Well, the quick answer is I don't. I don't need to. Maybe I died and this is some kind of hell, or maybe I died and I'm some type of guardian angel. Either way doesn't matter. From what I've come to understand, this room operates on some kind of cycle. The ones who were watched become the watchers. It doesn't ask for consent or offer a way out. You don't get a warning. One day you're the subject. The next you're the observer. I haven't found any purpose to it. It's not like I can intervene. I can't stop accidents. I can't whisper good luck into someone's ear. I just sit here, watching, always watching. That's the only function I've discovered so far. It took forever for the screen to stop showing me my life. Clip after clip of moments I forgot about or wished I'd never remembered, and then finally it switched. I guess I've been assigned to someone now. It's a baby, a girl, maybe a few months old. I don't know how or why, but she's the one I see now. Her crib, her parents feeding her, blurry snippets of their home. I know this sounds messed up, but as a man I don't feel right about it. It's not my place to be watching a little girl grow up. It makes my skin crawl even if I have no control over it. But I don't think this room cares much about how I feel. Luckily, I figured out that I can choose when to watch. It's not a button or a switch, more like a mental prompt. If I let my thoughts drift too long in her direction, the screen pulls her up. I don't know what happens if I ignore her for too long. I haven't tested that yet. I'm not sure I want to. Sometimes I look away for days at a time, afraid of what I might see. Other times I sit there for hours, just watching her grow. But lately, something's changed. She looks at me now. Not at the screen, at me, like she knows I'm here. A few days ago, she reached her hand out and waved. She couldn't have been more than 3 years old. I waved back. Instinct, maybe. Then yesterday, she held up a piece of paper, a drawing. It was me, sitting in this chair, same hair, same face, same shadow under my eyes, same room. After she showed me the drawing, I shut the screen off. I just thought about nothing for a while. Sat in the chair, stared at the wall, thought maybe I was losing it, more than I already have. But when I turned the screen back on, she was gone. Her room was empty, her family, her mother, they were all still there, just no sign of her, like Shed never existed. I waited. Hours passed. Nothing. Then the feed changed. I didn't touch anything, didn't think anything. It just switched, like something in the room decided I'd had my turn. Now I was watching something else. A new screen, a new room, a man sitting in the same chair I'm in now. Same walls, same humming. Except he was older, maybe late 50s, balding. He looked tired, like he'd been in here forever. He was watching someone, a kid, a younger version of me. The man leaned closer to his screen, and for a split second I saw it, his reflection. His eyes weren't right, too wide, too glassy, like he was trapped inside himself, watching something else, watching him. The feed flickered, and suddenly it wasn't his screen anymore. It was a recording of me. My childhood, again, but this time, it wasn't how I remembered it. There was a birthday party I never had, a dog I never owned, a man standing at the edge of the backyard I'd never seen before, wearing a watch I now realize looks exactly like the one I'm wearing now. My whole body went cold, because if this was a memory, why was I in it, watching myself years before I ever entered this room? The screen cut to black. Nina and David. This next part of my journey was written later on a different device. Sorry if it sucks. And then the door behind me unlocked for the first time. I rose, almost as if on autopilot, and stepped away from the old dusty computer. The door swung open slowly, revealing a narrow hallway lit by a sparse flickering light that danced along the concrete walls. The hum of the room was punctuated only by the sound of my own ragged breathing and the soft scuff of my shoes against the cold floor. The door creaked open on its own. Slowly, no breeze, no pressure, no reason it should moved. I didn't want to go through it, I really didn't. But I also didn't want to sit in this chair another second. So I stood, knees stiff from days or weeks of not moving much, and stepped toward the hallway. It was pitch black beyond the doorway, but as soon as I crossed the threshold, dim lights flickered to life along the floor, one by one, leading me forward. I followed them. This hall was different from the room I came from. The walls weren't industrial metal anymore. They were smooth, painted, beige, like a government building or a hospital from the 90s. I passed doors on either side, all closed. Each one had a small glass window. Why didn't I have one of these? I peeked into one of them and saw someone sitting in front of a big screen just like mine, except they didn't have a desk or computer. My heart pounded as I backed away and bolted down the hall. One by one, I reached each glass window, and every time I peered through, I saw a similar scene, a solitary person seated before a big screen, their eyes empty yet fixated, as if in an endless trance. The occupants were different each time, a young woman with a tear-streaked face here, an older man with tired eyes there, even a child who looked very familiar. The child was her. I couldn't believe my eyes. She couldn't have been more than 3 years old. What kind of sick joke was this? Why was she here? I fumbled along the door, searching for any kind of handle, anything to open it. Just as I was about to slam my body into it, the door swung open with a creak. There she was, sitting on that big chair, her small face contorted with tears. I reacted instinctively, scooping her up in my arms. She stared at me with an intensity that belied her age. Then, as if on cue, she raised a tiny hand and waved at me, just like I'd seen her do before on the screen. And then, with a voice so soft it might have been the wind, she reached up and poked my nose. "You're the drawing," she said. I held her close, trying to shake off the cold shock of those words. Just who was she? How did she know me? And most importantly, why had I been watching her for so long? only to find her here, reaching out, as if demanding I see the truth of it all. The silence in the corridor was oppressive now, every distant hum and creak a reminder of the twisted maze we were trapped in. I looked down into her eyes, searching for answers in that small, enigmatic face. There was something in her gaze, an unspoken plea, or maybe an acceptance of the fate she'd been thrust into. As I stood there, with her weight in my arms and her whispered message hanging in the air, I realized that the cycle had just become a little more personal. I wasn't just a watcher anymore. Somehow I was meant to be a part of her story too. And with that realization, I knew there was no going back. I was in too deep now, both the watcher and the watched, bound together by a sick twist of fate that defied explanation. With her quiet, unspoken command still ringing in my ears, I took a deep breath and stepped away from the door that had brought her to me. I had to find a way out. It wasn't long before I found it, a door so massive it nearly spanned the width of the wall. My pulse drummed as I entered a massive room. The walls all around were alive with flickering screens, each one showing countless others locked in their own isolation. It was a congregation of watchers, all imprisoned in their own cycles, each one watching someone, or perhaps watching themselves. I stopped before a particularly enormous metallic door, its surface gleaming in the half-light. A strange symbol was etched into its skin, something neither ancient nor modern. Unsure if this was another trap, I hesitated only a moment before pushing it open. What I found on the other side stole my breath. A vast, ruined landscape sprawled out before us. A post-apocalyptic wasteland where crumbling skyscrapers jutted from the barren ground like broken teeth. The sky was a sickly wash of colors, illuminated by a wan, permanent twilight. It was as if the world had peeled away from its old skin, revealing a harsh, unforgiving reality beyond the sterile corridors of this building. Her small hand gripped mine tightly as I stepped through, and together we navigated shattered highways and ruined cities that whispered with the memories of a lost world. After a bit of walking, our stomachs rumbled in unison and she began to cry, soft, pitiful sobs. For the first time since I ended up in that room, I realized I was both hungry and tired. The weight of exhaustion pressed down on me. I had to find shelter and some sort of food for us. As we walked, every ruined structure, every deserted building told a story, a time before the endless cycle of watching began. We pressed on, desperate to find any signs of life. I paused near a crumbled wall covered in tangled ivy, the harsh remnants of the old world clinging to its surface like ghosts of memories past. I could feel the chill seep through the fabric of my jacket, and my empty stomach roiled with the gnaw of hunger. I glanced down at her, her tiny face streaked with tears, and felt a pang of responsibility and helplessness. I haven't felt such raw vulnerability in a long time. It had to have been before my daughter died that I felt anything so piercingly human. I know I'm not her father, and she isn't the daughter I lost, but as I held this little girl in my arms, those familiar aching emotions surged back with a force I hadn't expected. Maybe this whole thing is a sick twist of fate, a way for the powers that be to let me have another go at life. I wouldn't have chosen this map, but I guess I can't be too picky. Slowly I put her down and took off my jacket, and I wrapped it around her shivering form. "I'm sorry. Don't worry," I murmured more to myself than to her, my voice barely audible. We walked and walked. For how long? I couldn't even begin to guess. The girl who I had silently started calling Mia held my hand the whole way. She never once complained, just kept walking beside me, her small frame keeping pace with my unsteady, exhausted steps. And then finally, through the endless gray haze, it appeared. A skyscraper. It looked untouched, like whatever had leveled the rest of the world had decided to leave this one building alone. Its glass windows still glittered against the dull sky, and the structure stood tall and proud while everything around it had decayed and rotted away. I looked down at Mia, and for the first time since all this started, she gave me a soft, tired smile. That was enough. I pulled her along as we pushed through the old revolving doors at the front entrance. Inside, voices filled the air. Quiet, normal voices. The sound of people just talking. The moment we stepped into the lobby, those voices stopped. Everyone turned to face us. A room full of strangers, dressed in casual, worn-out clothes, covered in dust and dirt, looking at us like ghosts had just walked through the door. The building itself was strange. You could tell it used to be grand. The lobby had high, arched ceilings, and a wide marble staircase that stretched toward the upper floors, though the once polished stone was now dull, covered in a thin layer of gray dust. Faded gold accents clung to the edges of door frames, tarnished and peeling. Chandeliers hung overhead, the crystals caked with grime. but still catching the faintest bit of light. It was beautiful in a sad, hollow way, like a museum of what the world used to be. Before I could process the moment, the group practically scooped us up, leading us through wide, carpeted halls into what had probably once been a conference room. A long table still sat in the center, surrounded by mismatched chairs that had clearly been scavenged from around the building. Someone brought out food, something warm and surprisingly decent, and the older people in the group immediately gravitated toward Mia, doting on her like long-lost family. The rest turned to me. One of them, a man whose beard had grown wild and silver over the years, did most of the talking. They told me I'd just been through something they all knew too well. They didn't know where this place was. They didn't know why any of it existed. All they knew was the cycle, the room, the screen, the endless task of watching, of being the eyes for a world that didn't even seem to know you were there. They didn't know who built it, or who controlled it, or if anyone even did. But there was one thing they were sure of. Very few people ever got out. The ones who did somehow found their way to this building. "We try to wait for new people at the cube," the old man said, apologizing softly. "We weren't there for you today. We're sorry for that." I didn't even know how to respond, so I just nodded, listening as he explained the only rule they seemed to have. No one here asked about your old life, and no one ever asked about the things you saw while you were in the room. "You leave that part behind," he said, his voice steady but hollow. "We all do. It's the only way we get by." They gave us food, water, and finally led us upstairs to what they called the apartments. A few rooms on the upper floors had been turned into living spaces, cleaned up as best as possible. The building, surprisingly, still had electricity, still had water. The elevator even worked, and nobody could figure out why. Apparently it always had. Food, they said, just appeared at the front doors every week. No one ever saw who delivered it, or how, but there was always enough for everyone. They portioned it out and left it at each apartment door, no questions asked. Mia and I thanked them the best we could, still dazed from the whole experience, and stepped into the small apartment they'd given us. It wasn't much. A couch, a bed, an old lamp flickering in the corner, but after everything, it felt like a palace. We walked over to the window and stood there, hand in hand. The world stretched out before us like an endless graveyard, buildings reduced to skeletons, streets swallowed by nature and time. But beyond all that, far in the distance, the silver cube still sat, shining cold and perfect in the sun. That place would always be there, watching, waiting. And now so would we. Years passed and me and Mia are doing great. I got married to someone who came out of the cube a couple months after we did, and we are building as good as a life as we can. I even found an old computer in one of the many rooms here, and wouldn't you believe it? It works. Unfortunately, it only has Reddit and a music playlist available on it, but hey, it's entertaining enough. Anyway, thanks for reading about my journey to my new life, and if you ever find yourself in the witness room, try and get out. This new world isn't all that bad. I'll keep you updated on progress we make learning about this new world. By The Watchers. Posted from an alternate universe. There's something sinister about my apartment building. Date Friday. Time night. I don't remember anything before moving to this apartment building. Really, I'm serious. I genuinely could not even tell you how long I've lived here. I couldn't even tell you what the name of the building is. I don't remember signing a lease, touring the place. Nothing. I mean shit. Jesus Christ. This is really a mess. Huh? What's wrong with me? Gotta be mold or some gas. It could be gas. I have been occasionally smelling this weird metallic smell like an old middle school drinking fountain. Anyway, I've been having some serious memory issues lately. Basic information, names, etc. Entire days missing. That's why I'm starting this log, so I can look back and read what happened if I lose any more time. I'm gonna try calling a doctor first thing on Monday morning. Just a few more days. I'm actually not sure what day it is. Wait, it's Friday. I know it's Friday because yesterday I talked to what's-his-name, the hallway guy. That was yesterday, which makes today Friday. Date Saturday. Time, morning. I tried to go for a walk outside today to clear my head. Only problem is, I can't find the damn stairs. I know, it sounds so stupid. It is stupid. How can I not know where the stairs are in my own fucking apartment building? This is getting ridiculous. I need to call a doctor now. Fuck waiting until Monday. This is like an emergency. Time for action. Date Saturday. Time. Called the doctor. No answer. The phone just kept ringing. I got pissed and threw the phone. I think it might be broken now. I can't handle this shit. I need to go for a walk outside right now. Fresh air. Fresh without that gross tinny smell. The whole floor reeks of it. No excuses. I'm gonna keep doing fucking laps around the entire floor until I see the stairs. Date, Sat. Time. Where the fuck are these stairs? I think I'm losing my mind. I must be losing my mind. I almost screamed when I came around the corner after the ice machines and saw the elevator. I had forgotten all about it. Problem is, you need a key for it. I can't catch a break. What is this? What kind of apartment building has an elevator that you can't use without a key and doesn't give you the key? I need to get to the bottom of this. Date Thursday. Time midday. I talked to the guy in the hallway again. I guess that means it's Thursday. I asked him if he's ever used the elevator. He said he hasn't. Didn't even notice we had an elevator. I told him I didn't either. I asked him if he knew where the stairs were. He said he didn't. He did mention the smell though. He doesn't know where it's coming from. I can just sit here. I need to get out and move around. If I can leave this floor, then I'll become the master of this floor. I'm gonna map it out. Date Thursday. Time night. I don't know what happened. I tried to map the place out. I got a pen and paper and an ashtray as a clipboard. Put the wall to my right side shoulder and just went forward until I hit a corner, then turned and repeated. The problem is, there. I mean, how can I put this? It's like, this place doesn't have a shape. I mean, it does, obviously. Everything has a shape, but it isn't. I turned left at a corner, and then later I turned right at the same exact fucking corner. I wasn't turned around. I checked the paper. I was going in the exact same direction I was going last time, at the same pace and the same distance. Instead of turning back in towards the rest of the apartment building, it turned out, it opened up to more of the apartment building. But it wasn't there before. I mean, maybe it was, I guess. I need to take a nap. My fucking head hurts. Date. Time midday. I slept for a really long time. At least I think I did. I'm now realizing that there isn't a clock in here. Anyway, I feel like I just woke up from hibernation, so I guess that's a good thing. All that bullshit yesterday really messed with my head. What was it? A map. What did I do with that map? I'm gonna go looking for it. Date. Time. I don't know what happened to the map. I don't even really know how it got lost, considering how empty this fucking apartment is. I have bare minimum furniture and not much in the way of personal possessions, so there isn't really even anywhere for something to get lost. Oh well, best to not worry about it. Missing things only ever seem to turn up right after you stop looking for them. I'm gonna go for a walk. Date. Time. I walked around the floor again. I saw the elevator, which is weird because I'm pretty fucking sure I took a different route today than I did yesterday. Plus, I didn't see the ice machines. They were at the corner right before the elevator, not today. My heart is starting to flutter. I'm way too young to be dealing with this kind of stress. My mind is falling apart and I need help. I need to get out of here. I need to find that fucking map. Date Thursday. Time night. I found it. I found the damn map finally. I must have been really loud when I yelled in excitement because the guy from the hallway knocked on my door. It was super strange. I mean, I guess it wasn't that strange. I was being loud after all. I opened the door and apologized for the noise, but he didn't really seem to care about that. To be honest, I'm not really sure what he even knocked on my door for in the first place. I guess he just wanted to talk about, what the hell did we even talk about? It was weird to see him here. I mean, at my door. I feel like I've only ever seen him in the hallway by the left side corner. Date. Time night. I went for another walk with the map and pen, trying to get a lay of the land. It doesn't make sense. It makes less sense. The more I explore and map it out, it somehow gets even more confusing. It doesn't help that my brain isn't working at full efficiency. At this point, I've determined that there's only two possibilities. Possibility 1. My mind has been poisoned beyond all reasoning by some sort of hyper-aggressive mold or chemical agent. I'm fucked, and will 100% die soon. Possibility 2. There's a secret room hidden somewhere on this floor. That must be it. Wait, yes, it actually makes so much sense. One of these walls is a false wall. It's hollow behind it. I know it. I'm willing to bet my ass that whatever's in there is probably what's causing my head to feel this way. Probably some animal that crawled into a vent and died or something, leaking toxic fumes into every apartment on the whole floor. How come the owners didn't send a maintenance dude to come deal with this? There's no way I'm the only one on this floor who's experiencing these symptoms. First thing tomorrow morning, I'm gonna find that fucking room. Date. Time. I knew it. I fucking knew it. I found the hidden room. I took the map and went to each spot, one by one, that could have possibly contained another room. Knocked on the walls, trying to hear for hollowness on the other side. Some of my neighbors opened their doors and leaned out to look at me. They weren't mad or anything, just curious, I guess. Anyway, the room. I started at the elevator, took 2 rights, a left, and then 1 more right, back at the ice machines. Started knocking, heard that unmistakable echo on the other side of the wall, hollow. For whatever reason, I decided to try and look directly behind the ice machines. They were pressed up right against the wall, so I couldn't see anything back there. I don't know why I did, but I grabbed one of the machines and started pulling it. It was heavy as hell, but thankfully I'm pretty thin, so I only needed to move it a little bit to create an opening wide enough to squeeze through. It looked dark inside. I really wanted to go back to my apartment and grab something to use as a light source in case the lights don't work in there, but I'm not sure if I'd be able to find my way back. Anyway, long story short, is a file room or a data room or something like that. There's a row of file cabinets in the back, a round table in the center with 4 desktops arranged in a circle around it, with monitors and mechanical keyboards. I immediately went to turn on one of the computers. It was functional but totally empty. Not a single app or file on this hard drive. It's a dud. I checked the other 3. They're the same. These have either never been used before or they were recently wiped. I tried to read the files, but it was way too fucking dark in there and the lights didn't work. I thought about reading them in the hallway, but then I got hit with a random sense of fear that I would get caught by someone and get in trouble for entering a forbidden area and reading files. I can't afford to get evicted. Or worst case, arrested. I need to do this in private, plus the metallic smell is worse in this room. I grabbed as many files as I could fit under my shirt without causing too much of a noticeable file-shaped bulge. Moved the ice machine back into place. Then I speed-walked back to my apartment. I have no idea how, but I somehow managed to make it back without getting too lost. Date. Time. I read the files. I mean, not all of them yet, but I made it through a folder and a half. In a few hours or so. Not too shabby. It's people. The files are like, just people. I mean, names, dates of birth, dates of death. It's files and files of random fucking people. Why? It's not just names and numbers either, it's whole damn essays. Like, this one goes into pretty excruciating detail over how this one guy would beat his wife up. It's like I'm reading a textbook or something. It's all so matter of fact. What's the point of it? Here's another one. This one is just a sweet old lady, but it's fucking everything. From the day she was born through to the day she died. Every major life moment and relationship she ever had. Who the hell is this old lady? Who are these people? They aren't famous or anything. I'm pretty sure they're just normal people. Why would anyone need this information? I'm gonna call it a night on these files and get back at it tomorrow, first thing in the morning. I won't stop until I start to piece this whole thing together. Date Thursday. Time, morning. Went for a walk this morning. I was in a good mood. Even the hallway guy seemed to be in a good mood. I almost forgot all the bullshit I've been dealing with for the last time period. Everything was fine, we just chatted about whatever. When I left, he didn't say a word, which was weird because he usually says goodbye. When I turned the next corner, I saw something that made my heart jump. It was a maintenance guy. I couldn't believe my fucking eyes. I had never seen an employee at this place. Ever. At least, not that I can recall. He had a hand truck, and he was unloading a brand new ice machine from it. My skin went hot, and my blood flushed. I knew I was fucked. I looked back at the wall where the hole opens up to the file room. It wasn't there. I mean, the wall was there. The hole wasn't. The hole was gone. They'd repaired the wall, which means... I could have sworn I was gonna die in that moment. I swear to God, I was so fucking scared. I couldn't move a muscle. I couldn't even say why, but for some reason, every single cell in my body was screaming at me that this maintenance man was about to lunge at me, wrapping his hands around my throat and snuffing out my life in an instant. I stared at him for so long, I was too terrified to blink. I was convinced that if I moved a muscle, even an eyelid, I would be dead before I could react. He didn't even notice me. He just unloaded the ice machine, plugged it in, turned it on, and left. Didn't say a word. Didn't even glance in my direction. I fucking sprinted home. Back to the files. I can't take much more of this. Date Thursday. Time night. Spent all day going through more files. It's nothing. Just people. Good people. Bad people. Old people. Young people. It doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter. What does any of it have to do with anything? Gonna keep going. There's got to be something important here. I feel like I'll know it when I see it. Date Sunday. Time, midday. That's it. I finished the files. I read every single fucking paragraph. It's just biographies. Nothing more. I've gained nothing from this. What the hell am I doing? I tried calling the doctor again. Still no answer. Infinite ringing. Are my calls even leaving this building? I'd have no way of knowing. If I could figure out a way to... This damn smell is making my head spin. I'm starting to be able to taste it. Date. Time, night. It's the middle of the night, and I woke up screaming. I was having a horrific dream, like so bad that it made even this bullshit I'm dealing with seem like a walk in the park. I almost can't even describe it. I was totally helpless. And, never mind. Just glad it's over. There's no way I'll be able to fall back asleep tonight, so I guess I'm going for a night walk. Date Thursday. Time, night. I ran into the hallway guy during my night walk. Scared the shit out of me at first. Truthfully, I came around the corner and almost had a heart attack. He was standing there the same way he normally does, leaning against the wall on his shoulder. He didn't say anything at first. I nodded to him and said, "What's up?" And he nodded back but didn't speak. I walked past him and kept going down the hall. I heard him say something from behind me, but I couldn't make out what it was. When I turned back and asked him what it was, I barely was able to catch a glimpse of him as he disappeared back into his apartment and closed the door behind him. Date Friday. Time, morning. I noticed a small little bag hanging on the hallway guy's apartment door handle this morning. I assumed an apartment employee had put it there. I didn't want to be nosy, but these apartment people are elusive and I have to take any opportunity I can get to acquire intel. I didn't open the bag, but I felt it in my hand. There was something hard, heavy, metal, stone, but it was wrapped in something soft. Fabric, cloth, no clue what it could be. As I stepped back away from the hallway guy's door, I saw a laminated piece of paper posted to the front of his door. In bold letters across the top of the page said, "Eviction notice. Date Friday. Time night." What the hell is going on with hallway guy? Evicted? I need to talk to him before he leaves. He's got to know something about the files, or the phones or something. Date Saturday. Time morning. He's gone. The sign was gone off his door, and the bag too. They even changed his apartment number. His apartment 803 now. I don't remember what number it was before, but I know it wasn't 803. Are we on the 8th floor? Date Monday. Time morning. Hoping I wake up and it turns out this was all just a really fucking bad dream. Date Wednesday. Time night. I can't do this shit anymore. I'm going thoroughly insane. I'm not seeing connections where there aren't any, right? There's something here. The files. These people, the hallway guy, the elevator, the fucking smell that won't go away. It's all connected. I know what I need to do. I need to go back to that fucking room. Date Wednesday. Time night. This might be my last entry if there's something awful waiting for me in that room. I don't really have anything I could bring as a weapon other than a dull kitchen knife. I have it tucked into the back of my pants. Hopefully I don't forget about it and accidentally stab myself in the ass. I'm going back to the ice machines in the elevator and I'm gonna kick a fucking hole through that wall and go back into that room. I'm gonna get answers. And if anyone tries to stop me, they're gonna get hurt really fucking bad. If this is my last entry, it means I'm dead. Send help. There's something evil going on here. Date. Time. I wish I never went back to the file room. I did exactly what I said I was going to do. I went back to the room, kicked a hole in the wall, and got my answers. There was another box in the corner that I could now see clearly due to the extra light coming in from the hallway. It was filled with files. I had a feeling that I should just lift up the files out of the box for a second. No real logical reason, but the feeling was too potent to be ignored. I lifted up the files and looked down inside the box. There was a USB drive on the bottom. I booted up one of the desktops and put the USB drive in it. Nothing happens. I opened up a file explorer just as I did before when I saw that the hard drive was totally empty, except now there was a folder. It had no name, but it contained two files, a text file and a video. I opened the text file. It was another one of those biographical files about some random, unimportant person. The problem was, this time I was that person. I was looking at my own file. It was accurate. I'll spare you the details, but it was accurate. So accurate that it's impossible. Some of these details are things that shouldn't be known to anyone. They couldn't be known to anyone. It's impossible. But there it was, all in the file, right in front of my eyes. I started to get a sinking feeling in my stomach. The feeling that I now knew exactly what was going on. The files, the room, the entire fucking apartment building. Or at least this floor of it. When I opened up the video file, my suspicions were confirmed. Every single one of those people in the files, myself included, is in an in-between state. Or at least, they were. Most of them have probably moved on by now. Moved on to the next life. A life full of opportunity, if they've proven that they deserve such a reward. A life full of hardship if they haven't. I've proven the opposite. What I saw in that video file, what I saw in my dream, it's real. It was real. I did those things. Me. I did. Even if I don't want to remember them, I still did them. No one else. Just me. And those poor people, they were helpless. I don't know what's waiting for me on the other side. I know it isn't a grand life full of opportunity, but I don't think it's a life of standard hardship either. I think there's something different in store for me, and it's exactly what I deserve. I found the eviction notice on my door the next day. Bag on the handle too. I opened it up and found a bundle of stained gray cloth. I unraveled the cloth and opened it to reveal my prize. My reward for all the effort I went through, mapping the floor and scouring through endless files. The elevator key. I became popular and forgot about my friend. Now my fate is sealed. Being popular in college was something I loved. To be honest, I didn't really do much to be popular. It just came to me. I had a pretty face, and I was a born extrovert. I was going to parties almost every week, going on dates, hanging out with my friends, just the normal popular stuff. Now the thing is, my friend Jocelyn was the complete opposite, an introvert who just happened to be my friend. Everyone just knew her as my friend. She would always be the one walking behind my friend group, trying her best to fit in and be like me. Don't get me wrong, me and her had been pretty close. We were friends since the beginning of high school. We used to be the best of friends, but my popular status in college definitely got the best of me. I began to talk to her less, and her presence was starting to annoy me. I had always thought Jocelyn was quite pretty, but people always made fun of her looks every chance they get. My friends hated her, and wanted her to stop following us around, but as much as I was beginning to not like her, I always told them to leave her be. A few months ago, Jocelyn had started to distance herself from us. At the time, me and my friends were happy she was gone, and people would ask us, "Where did your little follower go?" Me, being the horrible person I was, would laugh along with my friends. Not once did I even think to myself whether she was okay or not. I just continued partying and living my life without the person who had supported me throughout high school. Jocelyn began to get bullied more and more to the point where she started to not come to school at all. I didn't even notice until teachers started asking me where she was since she was my friend. I just shrugged and went about my day. She didn't come to school for a month, then came back. Something was different about her, something that actually made me notice her for once. She had lost a significant amount of weight, her eyes were hollow and red as if she had been crying, and she wore an oversized hoodie with sleeves so long they almost covered her hands. You'd think I'd come up to her and ask if she was okay, right? I didn't. I once again went about my day and ignored the fact that she was clearly struggling. People started making more fun of her, calling her bony bitch, laughing right in her face. My friends made fun of her every day, and I just laughed along with them, each time. I didn't even fucking think for once. How is she dealing with all of this? I just laughed at her existence, laughed at every single demeaning joke my friends made, and she got worse and worse. She got skinnier and skinnier, and as she walked the hallways, she looked deprived of life, of happiness, of energy. Then once again, she stopped coming to school. We all didn't care. We thought she was just attention-seeking, so someone would actually care about her. Until last month, there were news reports of Jocelyn going missing. All of a sudden, we were worried as if we had cared about her in the first place. My friends, who hated her guts, said they missed her. People were putting her missing posters around the school, and even I volunteered and helped them put those posters around the school. Her case was pretty popular around our small town, and every day after school I'd watch each and every news update, praying for her to come back. Then she started coming to me in my dreams. Each day I'd go to sleep. I'd have a dream where I would go to the beach by myself and find her body washed up along the shore, and her eyes, devoid of life, would look straight into mine. It was almost like her eyes were staring straight into my soul. The oversized hoodie she wore had the words "I miss you" on it. Every time I woke up from that dream, I'd sob, and I'd regret every single thing I had done to her. The dream was tormenting me, and I knew I deserved it. Even if I had a nap, I'd dream of the same thing. I couldn't escape it. It was the consequences of my actions. My friends started to get worried about me because I started to become more paranoid. I told them about the dreams, of course, and they said it was probably because I was thinking about her too much. Sometimes I swear I could hear her voice, whispering something unintelligible in my ear. Some of my friends started to hang out with my friend group less, for reasons unknown. My friend group was practically falling apart, because deep down we all knew we did something wrong. Yesterday night I was home alone, drawing to distract myself from everything going on, and all of a sudden, I heard a knock at the door. "Who is it?" I shouted as I went down the stairs. "Amber, it's Jocelyn, your bestie." Her voice sounded distorted. "Jocelyn, are you okay? Oh my God. Let me in. I miss you." Since I was so worried about her, without hesitation, I opened the door, and what I saw made my heart drop and made my stomach churn. Jocelyn was standing there with a smile, with a rusty knife stuck in her neck, and her neck had dried blood all over it. She was wearing the same hoodie I saw in my dreams, which once again had the words "I miss you" on it. From looking at her neck and face, she was decomposing. Sand covered her long black hair. Her neck had bugs feeding on her discolored flesh, and she smelled like death, literal death. Her usual vibrant blue eyes were a colorless gray, and I could tell her eyes were starting to seal completely shut. "What the fuck, Jocelyn?" I screamed. "You know, Amber, soon you'll be just like me. We both have the same fate. You may be popular now, but it'll all end the same. Soon no one will care about your existence, until you end up like this." She pointed at herself. "I'm just a different version of you, the neglected version, but it all ends the same." She stepped closer to me, and the putrid smell of death filled my nostrils. "You don't know it yet, Amber. You'll never know, until it's you next, and you will be next. Maybe if you actually treated me like a person worthy of life, our fates would be different." I start backing up, almost tripping on the living room table. "What the fuck are you? Get away from me. You're not Jocelyn." I start to hyperventilate. "This is all a dream, isn't he? Get me out of this dream." Jocelyn laughed to herself. "You think this isn't real, huh?" She took the knife out of her neck, but no blood came out. She grabbed my arm and slowly cut it. I just watched her do it with tears in my eyes, the pain not even registering. I could see the white cut slowly fill up with blood, which dripped onto the floor. "Let's see, if you wake up with this cut tomorrow, you know this is real. Because it is." She laughed again. "They'll see you soon, Amber. We share the same soul, and soon you'll end up just like me. The butterfly effect is real, Amber." She touched the bleeding cut on my arm, and all of a sudden I felt lightheaded. My vision became blurry, and for a few seconds, the face looking back at me as my vision blurred looked exactly like me. I tried to shout, scream, or do something. Anything. I couldn't. Then my legs gave out and I collapsed onto the floor. My vision was still blurry and my ears began to ring. I could still slightly hear the sound of a door closing. And then my vision went black. Today, I woke up on the floor, my head pounding and my arms stinging. I remembered everything that happened yesterday, and trust me, I still thought it was a dream until I looked at my arm. The cut was still there, and the blood that dropped onto the floor was still there too. I cleaned the blood up, put a bandage on my arm, and tried to sleep, but I just couldn't. Now I'm on here, writing everything that happened. What did she mean by "we share the same fate"? Does this mean she cursed me? Is she even human? And what did those reoccurring dreams mean? No handbook, no training, just a hospital with deadly rules I had to figure out. Hospitals aren't just for the sick and dying. Sometimes they hold things that should have been dead long ago. I learned that on my first night. My name is Claire. I had just graduated from nursing school, and after what felt like an endless search, I finally got a job at hospital. It felt like a dream come true. The stress of job hunting was over, and I could finally start my career. More importantly, I could finally support my mother. She had been sick for a long time. Not the kind of sick that comes and goes, but the kind that slowly steals a person away, piece by piece. She could no longer speak, and her body had grown frail. The medical bills piled up faster than I could count, and the extra income from this job would help us both. I thought she'd be happy for me, relieved even. But when I told her about the job, something changed. Her expression twisted, not in anger or sadness, but something deeper, a kind of fear that I couldn't quite place. Her already weak hands trembled as she reached for a pen and a scrap of paper. I stepped closer, holding my breath as she wrote, each stroke slow and deliberate. When she turned the paper toward me, my stomach dropped. "Don't go." That was it, just 2 words. But those 2 words made my skin prickle with unease. I tried to ask her why, but she only shook her head, slow and deliberate. Her eyes, sunken yet full of emotion, locked onto mine. She wanted to say more. I could feel it, but the words wouldn't come. I forced a smile, pretending it didn't bother me. "Mom, it's just a job. It's a good hospital. I'll be fine." She didn't look convinced. I told myself it was just her illness. Maybe she was scared of being alone. Maybe she was confused. But deep down, a small part of me knew it was something else. Still, I ignored the feeling. I needed this job. We needed this job. So, against my mother's silent plea, I started my first night. Night shifts paid more, so I signed up without hesitation. I figured it would be easier, quieter, less chaos, fewer people. Just a few patients to check on, some paperwork, maybe a few emergencies here and there, no big deal. But the second I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The air was heavy, unnaturally still, like the hospital itself was holding its breath. The lights overhead flickered, not in the usual way fluorescent bulbs do, but like they were struggling to stay alive. The hum of the electricity was low, almost like a whisper. The scent of antiseptic filled my nose. Normal for a hospital, but something about it felt off, too strong, almost like it was covering something up. I took a deep breath and shook it off. First day jitters, that's all. Then I met Nurse Alden. She had been working nights for years, or so I was told. She was tall, unnaturally thin, with pale skin that almost looked translucent under the hospital lights. But the thing that stuck with me, the thing that made my stomach twist, was her eyes. She never blinked. Not once. I tried to introduce myself, to be polite. "Hi, I'm Claire. It's my first..." She didn't let me finish. She just gave me a slow, almost robotic nod, then turned and walked away without a word. Weird. But I was new. Maybe she was just like that. Maybe night shift nurses were just different. I was assigned to restock supplies first. Easy enough. I wheeled a cart down the dimly lit hallway, past rooms where machines beeped softly, their screens casting a faint glow. The quiet was suffocating, pressing down on me like a weight. And then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. A soft, deliberate knocking. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. It came from the window beside me. The 4th floor window. There was no balcony, no ledge, nothing that could be outside. My first instinct was to turn and look. My hands twitched, my body tensed. But before I could move, I caught something in my peripheral vision. Nurse Alden. She was standing at the end of the hallway, perfectly still. Her eyes, those unblinking eyes, weren't looking at the window. She was looking at me, expressionless, silent, watching. And then she smiled. A slow, knowing smile. My stomach turned. Her smile made me uneasy. She was staring at me too intently, as if this was a test, as if failing would cost me my life. I hesitated, confusion creeping in. She had heard it too. I knew she had, but she wasn't reacting, she wasn't checking, she wasn't concerned. Why? I wanted to ask, but my throat felt tight. Instead, I did what she did. I gripped the cart and kept walking, forcing my feet to move even as every instinct screamed at me to run. That was when I learned rule #1. If you hear tapping on the window, do not look. I tried to shake off the unease, but it clung to me like a second skin. No matter how much I told myself it was just nerves, that nothing was actually wrong, my body didn't believe it. My hands were cold, my breathing felt too shallow. I kept my head down, focused on the task at hand, restock the supplies, finish the rounds, keep moving. That was all I had to do. The halls felt too empty. The overhead lights buzzed softly, their flickering creating strange shadows on the walls. Every now and then I thought I heard faint whispers, just beyond my hearing, just enough to make my pulse quicken. But every time I turned my head, the hallway was empty. I forced myself to ignore it. It was a slow night, that was all. Most of the patient rooms were empty. The few that were occupied had sleeping patients, their machines humming softly, nothing unusual. Then I reached room 307. Something about it made me pause. The door wasn't closed all the way. It was open just a crack, like someone had stepped in but never left. The dim light inside cast a sliver of a glow into the hallway. I swallowed, hesitating. Maybe someone forgot to close it properly. Maybe a doctor had just been in. Or maybe something else. I stepped forward and peered inside. A single bed, white sheets, slightly rumpled. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic, but there was another scent beneath it, something stale, something old. An old man lay in the bed. His skin was gray, almost blending into the pillow beneath his head. His chest rose and fell in slow, shallow movements. For a second I thought he was asleep, but then his eyes snapped open. I froze. His gaze locked onto mine, wide and urgent. His lips parted, and when he spoke his voice was dry, cracked, barely above a whisper. "Water." I took a step forward. "Please," he pleaded again. Instinct kicked in. He needed water. Of course he did. His voice was hoarse, his throat dry. It was my job to help. I reached for the pitcher on the bedside table, my fingers brushing against the cool glass. That's when I saw her. Nurse Alban. She was already in the room. I hadn't heard her come in. I hadn't seen her enter. She was just there, standing beside the bed. She rested her hand gently on the old man's forehead. His entire body went rigid. His breathing hitched, then stopped altogether. His lips, which had just been pleading for water, parted in a silent gasp. His fingers twitched once, just once, before falling still. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Nurse Alden whispered something, words too soft for me to hear. And then, the old man let out a long, rattling sigh. And just like that, he was gone. The room was silent. I took a shaky step back. Did he? Before I could finish, Nurse Alden turned to me. Her face was unreadable, her expression like stone. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Keep walking." Something in her tone made my stomach clench. I didn't argue. I didn't question. I left the room, my legs moving before my brain could process what had just happened. But as I reached the doorway, I hesitated. A sick, twisting curiosity made me glance back, just once. The bed was empty. There on the bed. The dead man wasn't there. The sheets, which had just held a frail, dying man, were smooth, unwrinkled, as if no one had ever been there. My heart pounded in my ears. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was too tired. Maybe. But when she left the room, I went in. I checked his monitor. No heartbeat. No breath. His body had left life. He was gone. And there was nobody there. That's when I learned Rule #2. If a patient in room 307 asks for water, say no. I was shaken. My hands trembled as I gripped the supply cart, pushing it down the hallway with stiff, robotic movements. But I couldn't leave. I still had hours left on my shift. So I forced myself to focus. Do the rounds. Keep moving. Act normal. But then, I saw something impossible. At the far end of the hallway, near the dimly lit exit sign, someone was standing. Someone facing me. Someone wearing the same uniform. Same posture. Same tired stance. Same face. My face. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a reflection. There was no mirror. It was me. It stood still, its head slightly tilted, as if just noticing me. My legs felt like lead. My chest was tight. Then, its mouth moved. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew it was speaking, and it was speaking to me. A cold, suffocating dread settled over me. My pulse hammered in my ears. I wanted to move, to run, to do something, anything, but my body wouldn't listen. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her. Nurse Alden. She was behind the desk now, half hidden in the shadows. She wasn't looking at it. She was looking at me, waiting. I didn't speak. I didn't move. And then, the thing that looked like me slowly turned. It walked toward the stairwell, but the door didn't open. It just went through. I finally exhaled, my breath shaky and uneven. That was when I learned Rule #3. If you see yourself in the hallway, do not speak. You might be wondering why I'm listing all these as rules. I don't blame you. But I remember what happened when I was 8 years old. My mother used to work at this very hospital. She was a nurse, just like me. And sometimes when she couldn't find a sitter, she would bring me along for her night shifts. I was too young to be afraid of hospitals back then. To me, they were just another place. Quiet, full of beeping machines and the scent of antiseptic. A place where my mother worked, where people got better. But there was one night I will never forget. I had fallen asleep in one of the empty patient rooms. It was small, with a single bed and an old buzzing lamp that cast strange shadows on the wall. The sheets smelled like bleach, and the air was cold in a way that made my skin prickle. But I was a kid. I curled up under the stiff blanket and drifted off, listening to the distant hum of hospital equipment. At first, everything was fine. Then, I felt it, a breath against my ear, a whisper, soft, too soft to understand. But it was there. My eyes shot open, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The room was empty. I sat up, my breath shaky, my little hands clutching the blanket. I wanted to call for my mother, but my throat was tight. I rubbed my eyes, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. And then, I looked toward the doorway, and I froze. There was a woman standing there, or at least something that looked like a woman. She was tall, her frame thin, almost stretched. Her hair was wild, tangled in thick knots that hung over her face, but it was her eyes that made my stomach twist. They were hollow, dark, like something had scooped them out, leaving nothing but deep, empty pits. She didn't move, she just stared. Then, she smiled. Her lips stretched too wide, her teeth yellow and jagged. The corners of her mouth kept going, stretching past where they should have stopped. She laughed. Loud, sharp, wrong. Not the kind of laugh that belonged to a person. Not amused, not joyful. It was something else. Something broken. I couldn't breathe. My tiny fingers clutched the sheets so hard they ached. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. And then, she took a step forward. I whimpered, scrambling backward until my back hit the cold wall. I forced myself to speak, my voice barely more than a squeak. "Mom?" The woman's smile widened, her head tilted, and then she whispered, "You're trapped." Tears burned my eyes. My body shook with silent sobs. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for my mother to come. Then, the door handle rattled. I gasped, my eyes flying open. The woman was gone. And standing in the doorway was my mother. I didn't hesitate. I ran straight into her arms, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. She held me, stroking my hair, whispering that everything was okay. When I finally calmed down enough to speak, I told her everything. The whisper, the woman, the laughter, her eyes. She listened patiently, nodding, letting me pour out my fear in rushed, breathless words. And then, she sighed. She didn't tell me it was my imagination. She didn't laugh or brush it off. She just pulled me closer and whispered, it was just a nightmare. I wanted to believe her. I tried to believe her, but I knew the truth. It wasn't a nightmare. It was real. And now, years later, as I prepare for another night shift at this hospital, I can shake the feeling that she's still here. Waiting. Watching. So if you're reading this, follow these rules. Because I don't know if I'll make it through the night. I needed a break. I needed air. My hands were shaking. My head felt light, like the walls around me were pressing in. The air in the hospital was always cold, always sterile, but tonight it felt suffocating. I just needed a moment to breathe. So I headed toward the nurse's station, hoping for a second to collect myself. Then, I heard it. The elevator. A soft ding echoed down the hall, cutting through the silence. I stopped. It was nearly 3 a.m. No visitors, no late-night deliveries, no reason for anyone to be using the elevator. But I still told myself it was nothing. Maybe a doctor had finished paperwork. Maybe a janitor had pressed the wrong floor. That's what I told myself, until I saw the doors open. and no one stepped out. I felt my chest tighten. The hallway was empty, stretching long and dim under the flickering lights. From where I stood, I had a clear view of the elevator, its metal doors yawning wide. But there was nothing inside. No doctor. No visitor. Just open doors and a dark, empty space. I waited. A few seconds passed. The doors didn't close. That was wrong. Hospital elevators had a timer. If no one stepped out or in, the doors should have shut by now. But they stayed open, like something was inside. Like something was waiting. I should have ignored it. I should have walked away. But then, I heard it. A faint shuffle. A movement from inside. Like something shifting, something pressing against the walls. I didn't see anything, until the lights inside the elevator flickered. And for just a fraction of a second I saw them. Hands. Too many of them. Pale fingers. Gripping the walls. The ceiling. The floor. Clinging, stretching, curling into the shadows like spiders. And then, the doors began to close. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. But just before they shut completely, a hand shot out. A hand that wasn't attached to anything. Pale skin, stretched thin over fragile bones. Fingers curling, twitching against the cold tile floor. I heard the soft thump as it landed just outside the elevator. Something inside me snapped. I turned. I walked away. Fast. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I reached the nurse's station, my heart slamming against my ribs. Then I saw her. Nurse Alden, standing at the end of the hallway, watching. Her expression was unreadable, but after a moment she gave a small, slow nod. Like she already knew. Like she had seen this before. That's when I learned rule hash 4. If you hear the elevator ding but no one gets out, walk away. By now I wasn't questioning things anymore. I was past that. There were rules. I had learned them. I had followed them. And as long as I kept following them, I would make it through the night. That was all that mattered. I just needed to finish my shift. That was my only goal now. But then, I saw it. A door. At the end of the hallway. I stopped cold. I had walked this hallway a dozen times tonight. I knew every door, every turn, every flickering light. But this door? It wasn't there before. It was wrong. It didn't match the others. The color was slightly off, just enough to make my skin crawl. The handle looked too old, rusted, like it had been there for decades. The air around it felt heavy, like the hallway itself was holding its breath. And the worst part? It wasn't on any floor plan. I had seen the maps. I knew the layout. There was no room behind that door. It didn't belong. I should have ignored it. I wanted to ignore it, but I couldn't. Something pulled at me, a quiet, invisible force that made my fingers twitch toward the handle. It wasn't curiosity, it was need. Like the door wanted to be opened. Like it was waiting. Then, I heard a voice behind me. "You don't want to do that?" I jumped, spinning around so fast my breath caught in my throat. Nurse Alden, standing there, watching. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. "What's behind it?" Her head tilted slightly. Then, in that same unreadable tone, she said, "You don't want to know." And the way she said it, I believed her. I let go of the handle. I stepped back, and I never looked at that door again. That's when I learned rule hash 5. If you find a door that wasn't there before, do not open it. At 6 a.m., my shift was over. I grabbed my things, keeping my head down, trying to shove everything out of my mind. The tapping on the window. The old man in room 307. The elevator. The door. I told myself it was over. I made it. But as I turned to leave, Nurse Alden appeared beside me. "You should stay," she said. My stomach twisted. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a suggestion. It was a test. I gripped the strap of my bag, my knuckles white. The air around us felt heavy, thick, like the walls were listening. I shook my head. "I'm going home." For the first time all night, she smiled. Good. And that was the worst part. She looked pleased. Not disappointed, not annoyed, pleased, like I had passed. Her smile lingered as I turned toward the exit. I forced myself to keep walking, my feet moving faster than before. But something made me look back. Nurse Alden was still there, standing by the door, watching me, smiling. I stepped outside. The sun was rising, its soft golden light stretching across the empty parking lot. The air was cool and fresh, nothing like the stifling atmosphere inside. I exhaled, relief washing over me, until I looked back at the hospital. The windows were dark, too dark, as if the building itself didn't want to let the sunlight in. And in the lobby, standing just beyond the glass doors, Nurse Alden, watching, smiling. I turned away quickly, heading for my car. The relief I'd felt was gone, replaced with a cold, creeping fear. I had to leave. I reached for my keys, my hands shaking. Then I froze. She was at the edge of the parking lot. The same blank expression, the same cold stare. But now, that empty smile was new. I spun around. She was by the emergency entrance. I turned again. She was by the ambulance bay. Then, the second floor window. Everywhere I looked, there she was. Too many of her. Too many. My breath hitched, my vision blurred, my fingers fumbled with the keys. I needed to get inside the car, now. I finally got the door open, jumped inside, and locked it. My heart was slamming against my ribs, my breath short and shallow. I gripped the steering wheel, forcing myself to look up, and my blood ran cold. She was standing right in front of my car now, just inches from the hood. No movement, no blinking, just watching. Her lips moved. I couldn't hear her, but I didn't need to. I knew what she said. See you tomorrow. That's when I learned the last rule, the life-saving rule. If Nurse Alden asks you to stay, say no. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, and I never looked back. If you see a painting of a beautiful redhead, destroy it. The first thing I noticed was his hair. It was a deep, dark, crimson red. It stood out against the painting's faded colors like a splash of dried blood. The rest of him was just as beautiful. He was slender, with long, elegant hands. His skin might have once been marble white, but the paint had become sallow with age. His face had the angelic features Renaissance artists loved: high cheekbones and a perfect Cupid's bow. His eyes were not just striking, they were captivating, impossibly wide and eerily dark. Those eyes, I would later realize, always had a look of profound sadness. As I walked through the gallery, I found that he was in other paintings. In the older ones, he was lurking in the background, cowering from falling rubble during the fall of Rome, or lounging on the grass in a bacchanal. In the later ones, he became the subject, Ganymede, offering a jeweled goblet to Jupiter, or Saint Michael with his sword held high and his wings splayed wide. I asked Dr. Clark about him. He gave a good-natured chuckle. "We call him Il Rosso," he explained. Salvaggio didn't always credit his models, so the boy's name was lost to history. He's like the Venetian Mona Lisa. He ended his speech with one of his warm smiles. Dr. Ernest Clark looked every bit the genius he was. Tall, broad-shouldered, a salt and pepper beard, wire-rimmed glasses. He was one of the most renowned art historians in the country, and the very last word in Renaissance Italian artwork. I turned away so he wouldn't see my excited grin. 3 weeks in, and I still couldn't believe I'd landed this internship. Not to brag, but it was notoriously competitive. Before, I was just some art history student from a small-town college in Jersey. Now I was at New York City's largest art museum, helping the legendary Dr. Clark with the greatest achievement of his career. Dozens of Salvaggio's paintings would be collected, restored, and available for public viewing for the first time in over 100 years. The gallery was set to open in 2 weeks. Dr. Clark and I were supervising its preparations. While we supervised, workers bustled around us trying to put everything in order. Dr. Clark suddenly rushed forward. "Careful with that. Make sure it's not in direct sunlight." The workers groaned and tried to adjust the huge portrait. I also moved forward to look at the painting. I'm only 5 feet tall, so I had to crane my neck up to see it. The painting showed Il Rosso as Saint Sebastian. He was nearly naked, tied to a tree and stuck all around with arrows. His red hair framed his face like a halo. He was staring directly at the viewer. "I could research him," I said. "There has to be a record of him, somewhere. I could solve the mystery. I could make it my thesis." I felt my excitement growing with every word. "That sounds like an interesting research project," Dr. Clark said, "and I'll give you any help you need. Though I should warn you, Effie, many have tried to track this kid down, and many have failed." I tried to sound as confident as Dr. Clark always did. I should at least learn something new. I stared harder at Il Rosso, matching his gaze as if accepting a challenge. Close up, I could see there were tears in his eyes. As soon as I got to my apartment, really my cousin's apartment that I was subletting for the semester, I started researching. First step, the most academic of all sources, Google. I didn't find much. Most articles just listed Il Rosso's paintings, 12 in all, which, until now, were scattered around the world. Some tried to speculate on his identity, but had no real leads. The general consensus seemed to be that he was no one important, not important enough for a name. After a few hours, I moved on to academic databases. They were much better. According to these articles, Il Rosso could have been anyone from a nobleman to a beautiful beggar plucked from the streets. Authors were more interested in discussing his impact on Selvaggio's art, not who he was. I didn't plan on giving up. There had to be at least one clue, one thread I could follow. It wasn't just an ambitious research project. There was something about Il Rosso that compelled me. Images of his red hair flashed at the corners of my vision. His dark eyes seemed to watch me until the moment I went to sleep. Find me, he seemed to say. See me. It started out small. At first, I would hear footsteps around my apartment, though I lived alone. Small items would seem to move around when I wasn't looking. I'd see flashes of movement in mirrors, only to turn around and see nothing. Typical haunting signs, I know, but things like that are easy to ignore. Stress, forgetfulness, suggestibility, all cause slips of the mind that mean nothing. 2 days later, I realized something was wrong. I was thumbing through a book about the painter Toulouse-Lautrec when I saw Il Rosso again. He was in one of the paintings tucked away in the back of a cafe. He hadn't been there before. A quick Google search of the original painting proved it. Hell, that was painted 300 years after Il Rosso would have lived. Yet he was in my book, a smear of vermilion paint serving his hair, 2 spots of black for his eyes. Trembling, I dropped the book and picked up another, then another. Somehow, he was in all of them. Everywhere from ancient frescoes to vintage magazine illustrations. I swear I even saw him in a comic book. Later I would even see him in other paintings at the museum. In all of them, he was looking directly at me. Look at me. See me. It only got worse from there. I was walking through the crowded streets of Manhattan when I bumped into someone. After making sure I wasn't pickpocketed, I looked up at the man to apologize. My stomach dropped. He may have been bundled up in a coat and scarf like everyone else, but I knew who he was. I felt a chill run through my body that had nothing to do with the windy fall day. I tried to speak, but my mouth was too dry. He didn't speak either. He just stared. Then he was swept away by the crowd. I began seeing him in more places. Sitting in a coffee shop, walking around the museum. He never spoke, but his eyes would follow me across the room. I even saw him in the elevator of my apartment building. In the confined space, his gaze became suffocating. Looking directly into his eyes made me dizzy. I felt the strong urge to reach out and touch him, to see if he was really there. But the elevator stopped. Someone else stepped in, and when I looked back, he was gone. When I returned to my apartment, I found my journal lying open, a note written inside. It was in Italian, so I'll do my best to translate here. Miss Effie Briones, I'm so glad you're taking an interest in me. I promise that soon all will be revealed. Il Rosso. Heart pounding, I ripped out the page and threw it away. This had to be a prank, right? Except I lived alone, my door had been locked, and no one except Dr. Clark knew about my research project. There were no other explanations. Il Rosso was haunting me. My investigation had somehow invited him into this world, into my life. But what did he want? What was he planning to reveal? All I could do was keep researching. Finding something, anything, about him might lead me to an answer. But all I got were dead ends. A few days before the gallery opening, Dr. Clark asked me how my research process was going. Not great, I replied. I made a show of poking around his cluttered office so I wouldn't have to meet his eyes. Most scholarly articles just talk about Selvaggio's creative process. Nothing about Il Rosso himself. Dr. Clark shrugged, still filling out paperwork. What can I say? Selvaggio was the genius. Il Rosso was just the face. I felt myself beginning to scowl. I loved Dr. Clark, but something about his flippant tone bothered me. This kid modeled for the greatest artist of his day, in 12 different paintings, and then vanished off the face of the earth. Dr. Clark had stopped writing. Some have speculated that the boy's modeling ruined his reputation, that his family abandoned him. He had to change his name, maybe even flee Venice. I whirled around, face burning. And Salvaggio was just okay with that, I demanded. Everyone just dumped this kid when he was no longer useful. How do you think he felt? Dr. Clark's face darkened. For a second I thought I'd gone too far. My cheeks burned. Why was I so angry? Maybe because I could feel Il Rosso's presence, like he was hiding between the crowded shelves. The observer who would always hear but never reply. Instead, Dr. Clark said, I'm sure Il Rosso knew what he was risking. Sometimes great art requires sacrifice. He returned to his papers in a way that suggested dismissal. As I showed myself out, I grabbed a copy of the exhibit's brochure. The back cover had Salvaggio's painting Abraham and Isaac. A middle-aged man was shoving Il Rosso to the ground, face first, holding a knife to his throat. Il Rosso's beautiful face was contorted in a silent scream. When I returned to my apartment, I found another note. Miss Effie Brianez. Thank you for defending me earlier today. Sometimes I am so lonely it becomes unbearable. I can't wait for you to become my newest friend. Il Rosso. I felt my gut twist. I snapped my head around, searching for him in the darkest corners of the room. I couldn't see him, but I knew he was still there, and I didn't want to wait around to see what it meant to become his friend. I gave up on the internet and databases and started visiting the New York Public Library. Every night after leaving the museum, I would spend hours in the library's dimly lit, musty upper rooms. I would have a table to myself, my only light being a tiny desk lamp and the glow of other buildings through the window. It was pretty eerie, but I'd grown to dread returning to my apartment. 2 nights before the gallery opening, I found my answer, or at least a semblance of one. It was in a book retelling old legends and folk tales of Venice. The book was so old the binding was practically falling apart, the pages yellow and stiff. The story was written in Italian, so I'll translate and summarize it here. The Curse of Il Rosso. The painter Salvaggio was one of the greatest in the city. The rich and powerful adored his skilled and sensual paintings, but there was one thing he was missing: a proper muse. A rare beauty would elevate his work to new heights. He found one in a youth who became known as Il Rosso, a captivating young man with red hair. The young man's origins are a mystery, but Salvaggio soon became obsessed. He moved the boy into his artist studio and started using him as a model. With Il Rosso as a subject, Salvaggio created some of the greatest paintings of his career. He made 12 in all, each more beautiful than the last. But with each painting, Salvaggio's obsession became darker. He became terrified that Il Rosso's beauty would fade. Salvaggio could not stand the thought of the youth getting older and his looks being marred by time. So one night, while Il Rosso slept, Salvaggio crept into his room and smothered him to death with a pillow. That way, Il Rosso would be eternally young and beautiful. Since then, it has been said that the 12 paintings have been cursed. Some have said that Il Rosso's spirit has been split 12-fold, trapped in each of the paintings. When they are united, he gains the ability to reach into our world. He haunts the individuals who are the most captivated by him, and some have said that he drives them mad. Eventually, the person will disappear, never to be seen again. This had to be it. 3 weeks ago, I would have dismissed it as a weird old fairy tale, but it made too much sense. I was the one captivated by him. I was obsessed with finding out who he was, and now he was haunting me. He said he was lonely and needed a friend. He mistook my curiosity for desire, and now he was planning to take me away. I needed to talk to Dr. Clark. The whole thing sounded insane, but he was the only one who might have been able to understand. My first impulse was to call him immediately, but aside from the late hour, there was too much of a risk of him getting freaked out and hanging up. I had to wait until we could talk in person and alone. The next day was the final day before the gallery opening. Despite our 2 weeks of work, we were still ridiculously busy. By the time I got Dr. Clark alone, it was late at night, long after the other workers had gone home. We were taking a final stroll through the gallery, making sure everything was perfect. I wasn't quite sure how to broach the subject. Things had been icier between us since our argument the other day, but tonight he seemed to be in a good mood, all warm smiles and witty remarks. His demeanor made me optimistic. I wound up telling him everything: my research, the haunting, and finally, my discovery in the library. Shockingly, he didn't freak out or question my sanity. He didn't even seem that surprised. In contrast, I got more and more breathless with every sentence. I felt like an enormous clock was hanging from my neck, each tick bringing me closer to doom. Finally, I cried. "You have to help me to stop him." I stared up at him pleadingly, blood pulsing in my ears. Dr. Clark remained impassive. Eerily so, like he felt nothing at all. All he said was, "It's too late." "What?" I gasped. "Il Rosso has chosen you. Once he's picked someone, his new friend, as he calls them, there's nothing we can do to stop him." I backed away as if I'd been scalded. "Wait, you knew? You knew about the curse?" He smiled bitterly. "Of course I did. I'm an expert on Selvaggio after all." There was an avalanche of questions tumbling from my brain to my lips, but only one came out. "What will happen to me?" Dr. Clark led me to one of the paintings. "The Fall of Rome. See that dark-haired woman?" I did. She was a pretty woman with olive skin and full lips. She huddled next to El Rosso as they cowered from falling rubble. The 12 paintings were displayed together for a short period in the 1780s. There was a maid at the gallery who became obsessed with Il Rosso. One day she vanished. That same day this woman appeared. He led me to another painting featuring merry-faced musicians. He pointed to a middle-aged man holding a mandolin. He was an assistant to a coal baron in the 1890s. The baron used much of his fortune to hunt down every Il Rosso painting, but the assistant disappeared shortly after completing the private collection. Dr. Clark turned to me. My mouth hung open in horror, but he didn't seem to notice. "You could say that Il Rosso demands payment for his services. Maybe he gets lonely. Maybe he's out for revenge. But every time 12 are collected, he takes someone." Dr. Clark peered down at my trembling frame. "We art historians have to keep him happy. Give him someone who doesn't matter." I choked out. "But this is insane. How many people have been stolen? Those paintings should be destroyed." Dr. Clark laughed. A sharp barking sound. "Really, Effie? I thought you were an art historian. These paintings are priceless. Why bring them together then? Why put someone's life at risk? Why me?" My voice broke on the final word. I suddenly felt so tiny, so pathetic, so expendable. He sighed. "As I said before, Effie, sometimes great art requires sacrifice." "You bastard!" I screamed, lunging at him. I didn't know what I planned to do, just attack and escape, but with ease he swept me aside. My head hit the wall, and I crumpled to the floor like a rag doll. Pain exploded in my skull, and for a split second everything went completely black. When I came to, I could see Dr. Clark looming over me. He was twice my size, easily. I didn't stand a chance. As I struggled to my feet, I noticed something. One of the paintings was empty. It was once a solo portrait of Il Rosso dressed up as Bacchus, and the painting next to it, of the musicians, there was an empty space where Il Rosso used to be. I stumbled away from Dr. Clark towards the door, when a figure stopped me in my tracks. It was tall and thin, rippling and wobbling like a mirage. No, like an oily liquid trying desperately to hold its shape. Paint dripped off the creature and into red and gold puddles on the floor. I couldn't see its face. The yellowed paint was so intense, so vibrant that it felt like looking into the sun. Its hair formed a crimson halo around its head. Dr. Clark came up behind me. "He's ready for you. Don't make this any harder than it needs to be." Il Rosso grabbed my wrist, yellow-white oil seeping into my sleeve. With a scream, I shook his arm off and rushed past him, bolting out the door. I ran through the museum, screaming for help. It was completely empty. True, it was well after closing time, but there weren't even security guards. I ran so fast, my lungs screamed with pain, but I should still hear them behind me. Clark's heavy footsteps and horrible squelching sounds from Il Rosso. I reached the front doors only to find them locked. I had no choice but to retreat further into the museum. I ran into the basement only to find that I was utterly lost. I could still hear those monsters behind me, meaning I was now trapped. I burst through a door that turned out to be a bathroom. At first I thought I'd been cornered until I saw the window. It was high up almost at the ceiling, opening just a few inches above the street. It would have been too small for Dr. Clark to fit through, but I could probably make it. I locked myself in the stall below and stood on the toilet to reach it. Just then the bathroom door slammed open. I could see Il Rosso's paint running down the bathroom tiles. Thank God the window unlocked from the inside. I undid the latch and cranked it open. Somehow I managed to haul myself up, and halfway through, my hands scrambled for purchase on the flat pavement. I felt something grab my ankle. It was too solid to be Il Rosso. It had to be Dr. Clark. He probably crawled under the stall door while I was distracted. I swiveled myself around and braced my hands against the outside wall, trying to push myself out instead. Dr. Clark was panting and red in the face. "There's no point in running from Il Rosso," he said through gritted teeth. "He'll always get what he wants." I glanced at that bright, melting abomination, and the monster pulling me towards it. I felt a sudden burst of hatred burn through me like a blast of lightning. "You want a new friend?" I shouted at Il Rosso. "Well, here he is." I used my free leg to kick Dr. Clark in the face. His glasses broke on impact and he fell backwards with a scream. I pushed myself out the window and crawled backwards onto the street. I couldn't see much from that tiny window, but it looked like Il Rosso was holding Dr. Clark by the ankles and dragging him across the floor. Dr. Clark was pleading with him first to go after me instead, then offering other people to sacrifice, then just for mercy. I couldn't tell if the red stains on his suit were paint or his own blood. They finally disappeared through the door, which slammed shut behind them. I don't remember much from the rest of the night. I vaguely remember taking a cab back to my apartment and limping to bed. In my dreams I was screaming, trying to claw my way out of a pit of golden oil and blood. I was jolted awake the next morning by my phone ringing. It was a frantic call from the museum director. Apparently Dr. Clark hadn't shown up to prep for that day's opening and wasn't answering his phone. So I slipped gloves over my scraped up hands, chugged a ginger ale to fight my nausea, and went to the opening, partially out of obligation and partially out of curiosity. The opening went pretty smoothly, even if Dr. Clark wasn't there. Il Rosso was back in all of his paintings. They looked untouched, except for one Jesus in the temple. It was always a chaotic image, showing Jesus chasing out the merchants corrupting a holy place. One of the merchants hadn't been there before, a middle-aged man with a salt and pepper beard. He was wide-eyed, his mouth open in a scream. When I got home, I had a new note. "Miss Effie Briones, thank you for giving me a new friend. I am no longer so lonely. I owe you a great favor now. Il Rosso." I had a sense this was not a favor I wanted to call in anytime soon. Within a few days, it became clear that Dr. Clark was truly missing. The NYPD asked me a lot of questions, as I was the last person to see him alive. I told them that we finished up prepping for the exhibit that night, and I left the museum before he did. Weirdly enough, there apparently were security guards placed there that night, but none of them remembered anything unusual. Security camera footage from that night was entirely static. Dr. Clark's unsolved disappearance was a huge disappointment to the field of art history. But then the exhibition was completed. Salvaggio's paintings were scattered again, and the world moved on. And me? I'm back at my small-town college in Jersey. I still haven't lost my passion for art history. But when people offer me condolences for my mentor's disappearance, I never know what to say. I can tell whether I should still hate him, or feel guilty for my hand in his terrible fate. My feelings for Il Rosso are even more complicated. After all that, I still don't know anything about him. I don't know who his family was or how he met Salvaggio. I don't know if his murderer was ever brought to justice. I never even learned his name. In spite of all he's done, I can't help but feel sorry for him. His beautiful face literally wound up being the death of him, and now his soul was split apart and trapped in the very paintings that led to his murder. He became a footnote to history. I wonder if the emotions I read in his eyes, sadness, despair, loneliness, were Salvaggio's invention or the result of hundreds of years of pain. And posting is a warning. I'm reluctant to trust the art history community. Who knows how many other people knew about Il Rosso and brought him sacrifices. But maybe, just maybe, those of you reading will learn the right lesson. Don't unite the Il Rosso paintings. Keep them as far away from each other as possible. Don't look into his story. He might target you next. And if you manage to get a hold of one of his paintings, destroy it. Great art be damned. This brings me to today. I was flipping through one of my textbooks when I saw him again. This time he was lingering in the background of a Victorian ball. Even in the crowded scene, the red hair and dark eyes were unmistakable. But this time he was smiling. I saw something wearing a man's face on the subway, and I knew I saw it. I never believed in demons, or reptilian shapeshifters, or whatever weird government-run horror people whisper about in Discord servers and conspiracy subreddits. I always figured those people were cracked out or bored or both. But that was before this shit started happening to me. Call me what you want. A delusional 25-year-old loser with nothing better to do than spiral? Fine. But I live in a shitty walk-up in Queens. I work a job I hate in Midtown, and I've got a useless degree collecting dust under a stack of unpaid parking tickets. I don't even want to believe what I saw. But I did, and I can't unsee it. 2 weeks ago, I was on the RAR train headed into the city. It was still dark out, just after 6 a.m. I'd barely gotten any sleep. The subway car was quiet, just the usual half-dead commuters, and the guy muttering to himself at the far end. Then he stepped on. Tall, clean suit, polished shoes, expensive briefcase. At first, he looked like any Wall Street asshole running on caffeine and narcissism. But then he turned toward me, and I swear I forgot how to breathe. His face, it looked like it had been drawn from memory. Wrong in the way bad prosthetics are wrong. Everything too smooth, too symmetrical. The eyes were too round, the mouth too wide, ears pointed and long, like someone had guessed what human proportions should be and missed the mark. His lips moved, but not to speak, just moved, constantly, as if rehearsing expressions without emotion behind them. Then he blinked. No, not blinked, reset, like a screen flickering. His entire face twitched all at once, eyes, nose, mouth, then locked back into place like a bad CGI render loading in. I must have stared too long. When I blinked, his face looked normal again, just some tired finance bro in a $3,000 suit. I actually thought I dozed off standing up. One of those micro dreams, you know, the kind that hit you seconds before sleep. But when the doors opened at my stop, I stepped off and happened to glance back at the train. That's when I saw it again in the reflection of the train window. His face was, well, it looked like a demon. And that wasn't the last time. For the next few weeks, I started seeing them, not just on trains, in stores, on sidewalks, behind windows, on Broadway, on TV, on the news. They were everywhere. There was one day, the day that finally broke something in me. It was a Tuesday, dead quiet at work. I was sitting behind the register, half asleep, and trying not to Google symptoms of a mental breakdown. Then I heard a small voice. "Excuse me, mister." I looked up. It was a little girl, maybe 7, brown pigtails, holding a small pack of batteries. Totally normal until her face twitched. Just for a second. Like something inside her skin pushed out. Her smile ripped wide, up past her cheeks, almost to her ears. Her eyes sunk inward, pupils swallowed by this deep, syrupy black that seemed to breathe. Her skin was too tight around her skull, bones shifting underneath like they were alive. Then it was gone. Normal face again, big eyes, soft smile, looking up at me like nothing happened. I backed up so fast I knocked over the stool. People started turning to look. My boss called my name, but his voice sounded miles away. I didn't care. I bolted straight out the front doors into the street without grabbing my coat or wallet, just ran. Every face I passed after that was wrong. Every reflection, every glance. Twisting, melting, watching. A barista's face split open when she looked over her shoulder. A businessman's neck bent in half when he sneezed, and he never fixed it. A toddler on the sidewalk made eye contact with me, and its eyes rolled all the way up into its skull. I ran all the way back to my apartment. It was supposed to be safe there, but when I burst through the door, gasping and shaking, I stopped cold. My parents were sitting on my couch. They don't live in the city. They never just show up. But there they were. "Sweetheart," my mom said gently, "look at this place. You haven't answered your phone in days." "Your boss called us," my dad added. "He said you had some kind of breakdown at work." Their voices were right, but their faces. Smiles stretched a little too wide, eyes that didn't blink, teeth too even, too white. I could hear them creaking when they talked, like something was moving behind the mask. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, shaking, while they stared at me with those perfect, horrible faces. "What's going on, honey?" my mom asked, tilting her head. Her neck cracked like dry wood. "We're so worried about you." "Look," my dad said, standing up. "We think you might have, what's it called, honey?" "Oh," my mom said with a soft laugh. "Demon face syndrome. It's all over the news. You need to go to the doctor, sweetheart. They have something that'll make it all better. And don't feel bad," Dad added. "It's an epidemic. There are a lot of people in your position right now." I didn't move. My stomach dropped. My skin went cold. "How do you know what I'm seeing?" I asked, voice hoarse. I didn't tell you anything." They both just smiled. Not a blink, not a breath, just smiled. "Because we love you," my mom said, stepping closer. "We know you better than anyone." "You don't look well," Dad said. "You should lie down. Maybe take some melatonin." "I never told you what I saw," I whispered. "I never told anyone." They kept smiling. And then, slowly together, they tilted their heads at the same angle. It was so exact. It was like watching a video glitch. "You're not real," I said, stumbling back. You're not real." Mom's smile widened until her cheeks split at the corners. "We just want to help you, sweetheart." I ended up being taken by what y'all would probably call the Men in Black. No badge, no explanation. They brought me to what y'all would also call a secret government facility. Sterile white walls, buzzing lights that never stopped flickering, cameras in every corner. We weren't allowed to speak to each other at first. Just sit, wait, watch. They packed us into a room, maybe 30 of us, faces pale and twitching, eyes darting around like hunted animals. There were TVs bolted into every corner of the ceiling, playing news coverage on a loop. They kept saying the same thing over and over. Demon face syndrome has been classified as a neurological epidemic affecting perception. If you or a loved one has begun seeing disturbing facial distortions or believes they're seeing demons in daily life, do not panic. You are not alone, and there is a treatment. The disorder is not contagious. It is simply a failure of the brain to filter visual stimuli properly. With medication and therapy, recovery is possible. You can have your normal life back. That phrase, "you can have your normal life back," was repeated at the end of every segment, like a promise, like a threat. One guy in the room couldn't take it anymore. He stood up and started screaming at the screen, veins bulging in his neck, spit flying from his lips. "They know," he shouted. "They know the veil has been lifted. We can see them now. We weren't supposed to see, but now we do, and they're trying to put it back." 2 guards rushed in and tackled him. He was still screaming when they dragged him out, but it was muffled. His voice didn't echo in the hallway, like the walls ate it. Nobody said a word after that. We just stared at the TVs and the faces on the screen, because sometimes, when the anchor blinked too slow or turned her head too far, you could see it, just for a second, a flicker of what was underneath. Anyway, after a couple of days in that facility being poked, prodded, interviewed, scanned, I was let go. No NDA, no memory wipe, no creepy men in suits threatening me to keep quiet. They just handed me a folder with a prescription in it and told me to take it if the faces come back. But I never took the pills, and I never saw them again. Not like before. Still, I don't think it's because I'm better. I think it's because they're better. Better at hiding. I tell you this much. I've taken the red pill, metaphorically speaking. I know what I saw wasn't some hallucination or neurological disorder. Those things pretending to be people, they are real. They are everywhere. I think they've always been here. And I think some of us weren't supposed to be able to see through them, but something went wrong. This is just a warning. If you've been through this, if you've seen them too, don't let anyone convince you that you're crazy. You aren't. I know you aren't. And I think there are more of us out there than they want us to believe. I'm working on a way to see them again. Really see them. Permanently. If you were part of the group in NYC, if you were taken and treated, please private message me. We'll send you a place to meet up with me. We need to come up with ideas on how to get our site back. The Backroads Buffet. You won't find anything about this in the news. No police reports, no missing persons lists, no footage. I've checked. I've tried. But I know what I saw. I lived through it. And I don't care if you believe me or not. I just want this story to exist somewhere. I need someone to know what happened that night, because I don't think I should made it out, and I don't think I was supposed to. Last year I visited my girlfriend for the weekend. She lived about 2 hours north of me, so we didn't get to spend time together every day, but I still made an effort to dedicate as much time as I could to her. I'm not sure I should say where I live. For the sake of anonymity, I'll just tell you that the terrain around here is varied. Some parts are dry chaparral, while others are dense woods. It was dark that Sunday night, and I was in a horrible mood. We'd gone to see a movie, and it ended up running far later than I intended. I had to be up early the next day for work, and Google Maps was telling me I wouldn't be getting home anytime soon. I didn't know it yet, but a plane had lost function during a flight that day and did an emergency landing on an adjacent highway. The traffic backup was massive. My normally 2-hour drive more than doubled. Then I got a notification and alert for a shorter route. Frustrated and desperate, I followed the directions and peeled off the highway. My phone took me down roads I'd never seen before. I wound through long, narrow streets until I found the main route the app suggested. I wanted to cry in frustration. It was just as bad as the highway had been, only now it was a single-lane road. Apparently everyone else had the same idea. Outside my window I could see why I'd never come here. It was a heavily wooded back road. Gnarled, low-hanging branches blocked my view of the sky, obscuring any light the stars or moon had to offer. I was about 2 hours from home, and it's not like turning back would make it go any quicker. So I sat. I turned on my favorite podcast and tried to make the most out of a bad situation. The woods made it hard, though. They were fairy tale style creepy, fog and all. About 30 minutes later, my speaker stopped working. I was convinced there was literally nothing else that could make my night worse. I was so over it. I laughed in outrage. Then the radio flickered, a blast of static. Then silence. Then static. Again. I reached to turn the dial, but the knob spun freely in my hand. I tried to roll down my windows, but that didn't work either. I heard a click the locks. I messed with the lock buttons to no avail. I yanked on the door handles, but they didn't budge. Then the engine revved, completely without my control. My car, and every car in that line of traffic, trudged forward by themselves, like carts on a roller coaster track. I looked in front of me and behind me, and saw the faces of the once drivers, now just passengers like me, on either side. They were just as confused as I was. The first one didn't show up for about 20 minutes. It was mostly just a mouth. I really don't know how else to describe it. A drooling maw with spikes for teeth and a million tiny legs underneath it, carrying its circular body toward the road. It had 3 arms, one on both its left and right, and then one above its upper lip, protruding out from its backside. It skittered out from the trees and inched toward a red hybrid. The car door swung open on its own. The poor woman inside didn't stand a chance. I, along with everyone nearby, watched helplessly as that mouth opened 180 degrees and bit her in half by the waist, head first. It slurped her legs down like noodles afterward. The forest erupted with screams. People pounding on windows, kicking at doors, sobbing, pleading. The horrific spectacle had reignited our desperate escape attempts. I don't know if the sound of panic is why it picked up after this, or if the smell of blood drew them out, but more came from the trees, dozens of monsters in all shapes and sizes. A 6-legged hairless man the size of a giraffe came up to a minivan, crawling like a bug. He reached into the sunroof and picked out the family inside one by one, the same way you eat popcorn out of a bag. Another resembled a horse walking on its hind legs, its back hunched grotesquely. Its mouth was shaped wrong, its teeth were massive, and its front-facing eyes bulged from its skull. Where its front legs should have been were 2 raptorial forelimbs, like a praying mantis. It used them to rip through a pickup truck like butter and did the same to its passenger, tossing the shredded remains onto the road before grazing on his entrails like a cow with grass. Still another just appeared as a mass of writhing worms or maybe tentacles. I don't know if something was connecting them all at the center. The windows of a sports car opened, seemingly without the driver's consent, and the thing squeezed inside like an octopus. The windows shut again. All that remained visible was the writhing mass inside. And I remember thinking something strange. I watch a lot of animal shows. I know predators have methods. A cheetah chases down a gazelle. Wolves run their prey until it collapses. Alligators float like driftwood before striking. This wasn't like that. These things weren't hunting, they weren't even in a hurry, they just spilled out of the trees, wandered up to whichever car they wanted, and helped themselves. This wasn't a hunt. It was a buffet line. And then it was my turn. My windows rolled down by themselves. I heard it before I saw it, slithering, wet, sloppy noises coming from the trees to my left. Something massive dragging itself through the underbrush. A massive leech, easily 10 feet long. At the front, if you could call it that, was a round, puckered mouth, ringed with rows upon rows of tiny triangular teeth. It reared up by my window like a cobra about to strike. I could see down its gullet. It was an endless black hole. It was death. It reared back. That circular maw, glistening and twitching, opened wider than I thought possible. I figured if death was going to visit me tonight, I had nothing to lose anyway. I threw myself at it through the window. I don't think the leech expected that, if it was even capable of thought. It made a hissing, shrieking noise I still hear in my nightmares. I'd interrupted its strike, and it had to twist its slithering body awkwardly for its mouth to reach me. I knocked it down, landing on the asphalt beside it. A numbness spread across my left shoulder blade. It didn't hurt, but I knew it had bitten me. Just a grazing blow. Its fangs had only scratched me, but I knew I had only a moment to escape, or the next bite wouldn't miss. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran until I didn't hear screaming anymore. I passed other shapes as I went, more monstrous creatures lumbering, galloping, or scuttling past me. They didn't bother with me. Why would they waste energy chasing one man when a whole line of trapped victims was still so close by? Eventually, I made it back to the highway. I flagged down a trucker, covered in mud, twigs, and blood. My wound hadn't stopped bleeding. It hadn't even slowed. He got me to a hospital where they managed to stop it. I rambled to them about the monsters in the woods, but no one believed me. I just looked like some crazy junkie. No one I told believed me. I checked the news, scoured the internet, searched the papers. Nothing. I'd been through my phone trying to find that route again, but nothing shows up. I don't know how so many people can die and no one notices. Someone needs to know about it. I need to know what happened that night. My name's Mark and I hunt things that shouldn't exist. The last time I decided to journal my travels didn't end well. I was hunting a demon that had the supernatural abilities to create life out of written word, and all the messed up shit I put down came back to kick my ass for months after that. Nearly killed me on multiple occasions, and I had many sleepless nights. I think it's safe to say that the pesky little fucker got what was coming to him though. I thought it ironic to use my own word as bait, only to lure him into a paradox. It went something like, "You will cease to exist once you understand why you cannot." You like that? I spent all day thinking about the best way to mess with him. Poor bastard tried to twist out of it, but you can't fight words when they break your own damn rules. He ended up comatose, loaded up in the back of my truck and thrown into the holy burn pit after that. Good riddance. Anyways, my shrink says I gotta keep writing things down and really process my thoughts and actions. I can then maybe identify what triggers my PTSD and try to make some progress out of it. I don't think he really understands the gravity of what I do. As long as I keep hunting, I am safe. The world is a safer place. It falls on me to keep it that way. So I'm shacked up in this musty yellow motel room in buttfuck nowhere typing out my emotions. As long as it helps me hunt, then it's alright by me. The fuck nowhere is actually a special place called the Hoh Rainforest in Olympic National Park. All kinds of god and devil-given creatures alike call it home. It's over 1,400 square miles of dense and mountainous terrain. Most of it is so remote that GPS and cell service doesn't work at all. What I'm saying is I'm very lucky to have narrowed my search down to just a small part of it. About 25 square miles is where my stage is being set here in Hoh. Hopefully it ends up being a good show. It's also one of the only temperate rainforests in the world, meaning it's cold, foggy, and constantly damp. Everything out here is covered in thick sheets of emerald moss. They grow out of twisted and wound-up trees under the cozy blanket of fog. Those wind-up trees are massive and ancient. Some even tower well beyond 300 feet. Their twisted roots and dense undergrowth make the forest a labyrinth with no real entrance or exit. Perfect for a little mouse like me to go and find my cheese. The whole place looks and feels like a dream, straight out of high fantasy. I've already done some preliminary scoping out of the forest to figure out what I'll need to survive for a week or so. Camping out there is serene, but also utterly terrifying. It's so silent, you could hear your own blood pumping, only to be broken up by the sounds of blood-curdling screams. Cougars. Among the animals to look out for in these parts are of course bears, the aforementioned cougars, and maybe an elk, if it's got its balls twisted in a knot that day. But the real big bad, the one I'm interested in, is responsible for centuries worth of disappearances and lunatics. I call it the Menemiseth. From Menemesine, the Greek goddess of memory, and Sith, an old word for shadow or parasite. It's an elusive creature that I suspect has some sort of memory warping ability. From what I understand of the research, it feeds off of the memories of its victims, sucking them of their life's essence, so to speak. Once your memory is gone, you become like a husk with a brain filled with holes, as if a parasite burrowed its way through your soft, fatty tissue and left you to rot. I talked to a young man last week who had an encounter with it, the only possible survivor from such a deadly monster. Every other account was just second-hand descriptions of events. I can assure you that he acted like his head was Swiss cheese, and he looked like it too. After the incident, he sure as shit couldn't take care of himself anymore. His parents kept him in his own room in the backyard. It was a shed converted to a livable area, complete with a bathroom, AC, and everything. They claimed that they couldn't handle his episodes anymore, and so I got the vibe that they needed the space more than he did. They looked tired. They wheeled out a decrepit young man with a 1,000-yard stare folded in a strange position, one leg tucked under himself and left arm grabbing the back of the seat. He looked like the origami of pain. A collection of mobile bagged fluids and tubes littered around him, some coming in, others out. He was gaunt and deathly. Head was caved in, a perfect concave lens around both temples leading to a sharp edge at the top where some wiry hair held on. I smiled and waved with smooth southern hospitality, but could tell my smile was just a bit too straight-lipped. That slight grimace of acknowledging something terrible had happened to him, and my sympathy couldn't help but show itself in an awkward gesture. I hoped his parents didn't notice and thought I was wincing, but they didn't seem to mind. They gave me nothing but kindness, the sort of people that would take great care of their disabled child. Good people. "Hey Eddie, my name's Mark," I said. I reached over and touched his frail shoulder. He squeezed his eyes and lurched back in his chair a little, like I was threatening to hit him. "He hasn't talked much since the accident," said his mom. The father chimed in. "He doesn't do much at all, stares off into space, draws a little. He likes that one cartoon, you know, the creepy one with that weird pink dog. Courage, baby. Yeah, that one." He looked solemnly at Eddie, then glanced at his wife for a brief moment, seemingly from embarrassment. I crouched down and got a better look at the kid. From what I've heard, the parents, Beth and Rick, went camping in Olympic National with their two sons, Eddie and Ryan, about a year ago. "So Eddie, you like to draw?" He looked scared, nodded his head a little. "Beth, could you show me some of his drawings?" She took me inside his shed, which honestly looked better than my own apartment. It was pristine and clean, very sterile, hospital-like. His drawings were black and white sketches of abstract nature. Some almost looked like chicken scratch. They were all pinned up on a corkboard past a drafting table set up to fit his wheelchair under it. Some of the chicken scratch looked like humanoid figures, almost amphibious and wet, dripping with charcoal onto eggshell ground. One of them looked like a little boy, holding hands with a taller, more pronounced and thick stick figure. I heard the rattle of Eddie's wheelchair behind me, and when I turned around, he looked me in the eyes for the first time. "Don't trust what you know." He slurred, "What you think." He took a deep and labored breath. "Yourself." I don't know what Eddie was trying to tell me, but I think at that moment, he knew what I was at his home for. He knew what I was after, and I felt like he was trying to warn me. They said that Eddie started to act irrationally on the first day camping. He would say the same things over and over. He would think he was somewhere he was not. He started to have some night terrors in the tent, then went out sleepwalking in the middle of the night. Beth got scared shitless when she woke up and didn't see poor Eddie in his sleeping bag. She ran out into the forest, following the sounds of light thudding in the distance, and found Eddie bashing his head into a tree, over and over. The bark was stripped bare, and so was his head, raw and broken, bleeding all over his face. He turned and looked at his mother, woke up and cried. He didn't know where he was, or what was happening to him. That night was the single most excruciating time of their lives, something feverish that punched my gut and made me queasy. Beth tried to wake up her family, but she said it was as if they were drugged. They'd just mumble, Rick would say some profanities and something about leaving him alone, and they'd doze off once more. Meanwhile, Eddie was a zombie, looking off into those damp, twisted trees, eyes following each one in spirals, making him nauseous. He retched onto the ground, creating puddles of stomach acid until he dry heaved, while his mom was desperately shaking and slapping her husband to wake up. "I don't want to go. No, Mom, please. Please don't leave me, please," he begged her as she squeezed her else red-stained face and promised him everything was going to be okay. Beth dragged Rick out of the tent to try and put him in the truck to take to the hospital. She had the right idea to get the fuck out of Dodge, but it was too late. She says she swore she saw something dragging Ryan's limp body in the dark. When she shined a light at it, the thing hissed at her and looked at Eddie, who started to attack his mom. He didn't recognize her anymore and screamed she was a monster as he brutally beat his mom half to death. She said she could hear the bones in her face crunching under the weight of his fists. Her screams and pleads for help were so loud it finally woke up Rick, who promptly restrained his son. "What the fuck are you doing?" she heard as she ran after the thing carrying Ryan into the woods. All bloodied, face smashed in and still in her pajamas, she looked through swollen eyes as the thing held hands with Ryan, who was still only 5, kissed him on the cheek, and let him jump off the cliff ahead of her. Eddie followed behind, passing her right by as she was still frozen in shock, looking at a real-life monster that just pushed her little baby to suicide. He jumped off in one big leap to what was supposed to be his demise. She thought she lost both her babies that night. She thought she was insane. That's what the police told her too. That's what they told Rick, who at the time was folded like laundry at the foot of the truck by the hands of his deranged and empowered son. The thing looked back at her and she swore she saw it give her a smirk, reveling in her pain, just for a moment, before it leaped away. The authorities found Eddie and Ryan's bodies the next day. No one thought Eddie had even a remote chance of survival, but he did. He hung on that whole night and half a day, battered and broken at the bottom of a crumbling rock face, with his little brother's dead body lying next to him. Nothing he could do, nothing he could say to be forgiven, just the pain, just the sadness, just the insanity to keep him company. After hearing all of this, I didn't know what made the young man mad. Was it the Mnemosyth or his own actions? But Beth showed me a copy of his head MRI when I asked for it, and I saw for myself what the real damage was. It looked like a worm burrowed its way through his head, leaving it a messy art piece of collapsed bridges and glued together with sticks. How could anyone be alive with nothing but mush in their head? How could anyone keep living after they did such a thing, thinking it was all their fault and had no one else to blame? I couldn't help but blurt out through gritted teeth, "This is sick." Beth looked up at me, finally with tears in her eyes and conviction in her voice, stronger than any other sentence I heard the woman ever say to me. "You're going to kill it. You're going to stop that thing." Deep down, boiling inside me was a rage I haven't felt in a long time. Something animalistic and profoundly human. Consider the fucker dead. So, that's how I got here. Out in the boonies of Washington, setting the stage of my next hunt. I plan on waking up at dawn and heading to a fire lookout perched on a tall mountain overlooking the rainforest. I got my weapons ready, but something tells me I'll need some better tricks up my sleeve for a creature that'll wipe my memory and mess with my head. Something more than just firepower. I'll definitely need to keep my wits about me. The view from up here is amazing. Panoramic windows and deck give me the greatest vantage I can ask for. Although this being the case, dense fog and thick forest obscure the ground level where I can assume the Mnemosyth is hiding out. I already set a couple of alarm traps in my vicinity and made my presence known with a large bonfire I built at the base of the tower. The little fucker should know I'm here, and I hope to God he's hungry. I changed up my sleep schedule earlier on in the week so I can stay energized through the night, as it is likely a nocturnal animal. Just woke up a little before sunset and I'm enjoying some instant coffee on the deck, taking deep breaths and establishing a strong connection with my mind and body. If this thing is going to mess with my head, I figured the least I could do is practice some meditation, something my shrink also wants me to do anyways. I don't believe in hoo-ha nonsense like the spirituality you can buy at a supermarket, but I concur that the meditations do in fact calm my nerves. My list is all checked off. Traps, weapons, food, water, shelter, transport, radio. Looks good. Okay, it's time to find out what us little people are made of. Apologies if some of this doesn't make much sense. I'm still putting together the pieces of what happened last night. The sun was setting in marvelous glows of pastel tones arranged in warm colors that filled my body with comfort. I set down my mug when the final embers of the day vanished to reveal a night sky filled with the Milky Way. Like someone turned on the universe's nightlight, it presented everything in just enough cool-toned lighting that a flashlight wasn't needed until the fog rolled in. I put on my backpack and threw the machete into my sling when I heard it. A loud bang, like a gunshot ringing out that rustled many feathers as a flock of birds got scared away just east of me. It could have been anything, but I had to go check and make sure. Climbing down the steps of the old rickety tower, I began to hear brutal screaming. The kind of screams you only hear in dire circumstances, like someone was being mauled, then another, and another. I was surrounded by the screams of what sounded like women all around me. I knew them to be cougars, but it was definitely some shady shit going on. It was like surround sound, all around my skull, and off in the distance they were all curdling in fear. It made me scared too. I took a second to ground myself and started running toward the east. Game time. Navigating that forest would have been impossible without my headlamp and machete. Still, progress was slow even with the paths I marked and cleared earlier. It was like the shrubbery had some magical miracle grow in them and they covered my paths just as fast as I cut them down. When I made it to my east trap, I was surprised to see that the trigger mechanism wasn't pulled. The sly shit tricked me already, but I was prepared for a lure anyways. I hate the intelligent ones because they always pull childish stunts like this, thinking they're smarter than me. I may not be a genius, but I'm good at what I do. I pulled out my handgun, closed my eyes, and listened. Then the slightest rustle in the leaves jolted me back. I flipped around aiming through the iron, and then I wasn't there anymore. I was a kid, back in Arkansas, and I immediately threw up in my lap from the sheer dizzying spiral of what just happened. I tried so hard to remember what was going on, but it was like my whole life before that never happened, and it felt like a dream to me. It got to a point that all I could remember was the mantra I said when meditating. Don't trust what you know, what you believe. Yourself, I said in a rushed whisper over and over. I was startled when I got a slug to the face in the middle of my rambling. What the fuck is wrong with you, Mark? Said the man in the front driver's seat of an old Tacoma. You little shit, you ruined my fucking car. He threw more right hands at me until eventually pulling the car over to drag me out and started to beat me on the side of the road. The beating was a familiar taste I knew all too well. The salty sweat of a man I pushed back in my mind palace far, far away from myself. My father. I tried to push him away, but my feeble body didn't have enough strength to fight back. I just ate every hit until a tooth cut through my bottom lip and I felt my nose crack and bleed down my chin. He stood up in a grunt, an exacerbated breath. Today's the day, Mark. He took some deep inhalations. You really fucking pushing me. I'll leave you out here if you don't suck it up. He walked over to the truck and cracked open one of the Coors that littered the back seat. He started back over to me while swigging it. What you gotta say, little man? Still laying on that dry pavement, I spit a hot bloody loogie at his feet. Fuck you, you freak. He got on top of me and really let me have it that time. Full swings and torn up knuckles driving my head into the pavement over and over. When I started to lose consciousness, I began to have flashes of me in the forest and something else on top of me, something slimy and wet, with claws and needle teeth. That's when I snapped out of it. I threw the thing off of me and was surprised to find just how light it was. About 90 pounds of gross muscle, contorted and amphibious. It reeked of mold and decaying meat. The Menopsith hissed at me and leaped away into a tree as I heard it bound across branches. You scared, bitch, I screamed in frustration. I let off a couple of shots, but none of them hit their mark as I was dizzy and tired. My equilibrium was off and my ears rang like a bomb exploded in my skull. It bounded away and I knew I had to go back to the tower to reassess and check the damage before it attacked again. The journey back was daunting. I stumbled all over the place and kept hearing my father in my head, yelling at me, telling me things, whispering to me to keep secrets, terrible secrets, the ones I'm in therapy for. When I finally made it back, I checked the mirror to find I indeed suffered a real beating. Broken nose, black eye, cut on the bottom lip, definitely a concussion. The only new things were the small pinpricks nesting around my scalp. The monster tried to burrow its way through my brain just like Eddie. It almost got me good. Bringing my dad out like that was a real pain, and when I started to think of him, my anxiety spiked. I shot up and cut down the stairs to the entrance of my lookout, boarded up the entrance, then sat in a corner and took deep breaths trying to get rid of my panic. Ever since I couldn't re-up my Xanax prescription, I've had to just suck it up and deal with the panic attacks myself. When I finally started to feel a bit better, I began to realize that taking away my only escape route might not have been such a great idea, but in my mind at the time, it was the only way to ensure I was going to be left alone, the only way to stay safe. I took some deep breaths in that musty corner and even ate a granola bar. It hurt like hell crunching on it, but I had to chew on something. I heard that animals only eat when they're safe, so if you eat when you're panicked, then you could trick the mind into relaxing. This time it only helped a little. Come on out, Mark, I heard from outside. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw Dad making rounds about the lookout. He was holding an axe, and was bigger than I remember, wearing that same stupid hat and filthy plaid shirt, looking like a goddamn lumberjack. His hands and body were still dirty and bloody from the beating he gave me earlier. His voice boomed with authority. You can't hide forever, little boy toy. Shit. Panic mode was in full effect. That's what he used to call me when... I leaned out the porch and with gritted teeth started shooting at him, but I was still just as bad of a shot as earlier and couldn't quite reach him. The gun ran out of bullets, so I ducked back into the cabin and began reloading when I heard thunderous cracks coming from below me. They shook the tower and threw me off balance, knocking me on my ass. The bastard was going to take the whole thing down. Sure enough, the remaining legs couldn't withstand the weight of its cabin, and my big fat ass fell down with it. I saw the sky quickly revolve into earth and back again as I tumbled through the air. The cabin slammed into the mountainside facing up, but at a steep angle, shattering all the windows. The impact made the fridge fall from above me, crushing my left arm between it and the floor. I screamed out in pain as it slid off me and fell through the windows and down the cliff. My arm was twisted up, compound fracture through the elbow, and nicked an artery too. Blood was gushing out 3 feet in spurts that were in sync with my heartbeat. I quickly tore off my shirt and wrapped it. That's when the cabin started sliding. The Metameses started clawing at the barricaded door above me, cutting through the plywood like butter. It shrieked like a cougar and pounced as we both skid our way down the slope. Trees and rocks rushed past us, tearing up the cabin and splitting it into pieces like grated cheese. I rolled around a wall to avoid getting hit, but the damn thing kept coming at me with ferocity, swinging its claws around with no purpose or care. I managed to shoot it a couple times in the body, and milky fluid bled from it like a punctured balloon. Smash! We made it to the bottom, and when the wreckage settled, all was silent. I stood up, and through double vision and fog, I saw my dad again, approaching slowly with arms out wide. "You know I love you, buddy. I love you so much." Hunched over, half dead, and completely done with that shit, I said, "You love me now?" and emptied the rest of my magazine into the filth. He doubled over and flexed back, arching his spine into a bridge that melted the skin off and became his true form. A slimy, nasty, overgrown frog thing. It screamed one last time, rattling its lungs out until slowly catching a hitch in its breath, gurgling on fluids. It slowly died there, melting into the wreckage like bubbly acid. It took some time getting back to my truck, even more time to drive to a hospital and convince the staff I was just in a car wreck. You live and you learn. I called Beth in the hospital and let her know what happened. She's ecstatic and invited me over for dinner once I get out. I begged her to make me some cheesecake, and she did me one better to offer a ride from the hospital with Rick and Eddie too. We'll be taking a short break from hunting to heal up and recharge. In the meantime, I'll be taking any offers or bounties people have and setting up a schedule. My shrink is pissed that I missed my last appointment and told me no excuses when I explained the whole almost dying thing. He told me to just keep journaling and make sure to come back to the office once I'm out of the hospital. That guy. Something still bugs me though. When I first came down that tower, I didn't just hear one cougar. They were everywhere. Maybe just another sick trick. Anyways, till next time, Mark. There's no toll on Route 78. We were hurtling west on Route 78 deep in the gut of Pennsylvania, running blind towards Ohio. Not for scenery, we were running. From the polite knocks of debt collectors that echoed wrong in our apartment stairwell, from the hollow resonance of the house where Chloe had spent 11 months watching cancer siphon the life from her mother. From grief that wasn't like mold, it was mold. A damp, pervasive chill clinging to our clothes, our lungs, the backs of our throats. A fresh start, we called it. The phrase tasting like ash as we steered the rented U-Haul towing my wheezing Civic. Hope felt like contraband. It was deep night. Maybe 2 a.m. The hour the world thins, when highway lines blur into hypnotic tracers pulling you toward an oblivion whispering invitations. Chloe slept beside me, head canted against the vibrating window, her breath a soft counterpoint to the engine's drone. A small mercy, her unconsciousness. My own eyes felt scoured with sandpaper, fueled by gas station coffee curdling in my gut. That's when the radio soured. It had been snagging classic rock through static for an hour, normal for the terrain. But Pink Floyd didn't just fade. It dissolved, smothered by static that wasn't crisp. It was thick, wet, like listening through pond scum. Beneath it, almost subliminal, a rhythm asserted itself. Slow, deliberate. Thump thump, pause. Thump thump, pause. Not a heartbeat, something larger, deeper, beating in the earth beneath the asphalt. I stabbed at buttons, twisted the dial. Nothing but that viscous hiss, the deep pulse resonating through the plastic dash, vibrating in my teeth. I killed the radio, craving silence. The silence that rushed in felt wrong, heavy, pressurized. My ears popped violently. A sudden descent. Mirrors showed miles of moon-bleached emptiness behind us, ahead only darkness. Yet the hairs on my arms lifted, the intimate chill of cold breath on my neck, the illogical primal certainty of being observed. Through the windshield, the stars burned with unnatural clarity, too numerous. Constellations I didn't recognize, but felt disturbingly familiar, like half-remembered symbols from a fever dream. Then the engine sighed, a soft exhalation of power. Dashboard lights didn't flicker. They pulsed once hard, in time with that hidden beat, then died. I cursed, stomped the useless gas pedal. The engine didn't seize. It simply ceased, like a switch thrown miles away. The U-Haul glided, momentum bleeding away with terrifying smoothness, rolling to a dead stop on the shoulder, swallowed by the wilderness. "Liam? What?" Chloe startled awake, voice thick, face stark in the moonlight. The weight loss from mourning had sculpted her features into something fragile, almost translucent. "I don't know," I managed, turning the key, utterly dead, not a click. Engine just stopped. Panic bloomed, cold and metallic. Stranded. No cell service, confirmed an hour ago. Deep night. Nowhere. "Okay," Chloe said, finding that brittle calm forged in hospital vigils. "Okay, someone will come. A trucker. Trooper. It's 78. We waited. Minutes stretched. An hour, measured by my frantic pulse. Then another. The silence itself was the loudest thing. No crickets. No night birds. No rustling. Just the profound weight of the dark, pressing in. And beneath it all felt more than heard. That rhythm from the radio. Thump thump. Pause. Vibrating up through the tires. Humming in my fillings. Chloe rubbed her temples. Knuckles white. "This isn't right, Liam," she whispered, eyes huge, scanning the void. "Not one car? Not even distant lights? On 78. She was right. It was a major artery. Even now, semis should be thundering past. The emptiness felt deliberate, curated. Then I saw it. Not headlights. Faint, diffuse lights, shivering through dense trees maybe half a mile ahead, bleeding from a barely there track peeling off the highway. A track I hadn't noticed, wasn't on any map. No sign. "Look," I pointed. Hope a weak sputtering flare. Lights, town, gas. Anything felt better than this waiting dark. "Stay here. Lock up," I said, grabbing the mag light. "No." Chloe grabbed her jacket, hand finding mine gripped tight. Her mother had coded while they were grabbing regrettable cafeteria coffee. She hadn't willingly left my side since. Together. The track was rutted dirt, hemmed in by trees whose branches interlaced like gnarled fingers. The air grew instantly colder, thick with the damp, loamy smell of recently disturbed earth. Like a fresh grave, the thought surfaced. Unwelcome. With each step, the pulsing rhythm grew stronger, no longer just sensed but physically felt, a vibration rising through our shoes synchronized with that hidden beat. The lights resolved into a small, impossibly isolated town cupped in a hollow. But the town, it was fundamentally wrong. Like a scale model, disturbingly pristine, picket fences too white, houses too symmetrical, windows glowing warmly but revealing no movement, no cars, no litter, no barking dogs, no TV murmur, preserved under glass. And the silence, not absence of sound, but sound suppressed, held down, digested. The air itself felt thick, resistant. The feeling of being watched intensified tenfold. Behind every flawless window, unseen eyes, waiting. A single building stood centrally lit. Garage, the faded sign declared. Lamplight spilled. "Hello?" My voice sounded obscene yet flat, absorbed by the dead air. No echo. Anyone. Our truck broke down on the highway. The large garage door slid upwards with a pneumatic hiss eerily mirroring the radio static. A figure stood silhouetted, tall, unnaturally thin, in greasy overalls. He stepped into the light. His face was a roadmap of deep lines, eyes a pale, clouded blue, unfocused. He didn't look at us, but through us. A disturbing resonance to his features. A distorted familiarity, though I'd never seen him. His overalls seemed stained not just with grease, but with the darkness of the asphalt itself in places. Broke down. His voice was a dry rustle, like snakeskin over sand, carrying that same damp subterranean undertone as the static. On the route. "Yeah. Back on 78. Engine just cut out." He nodded. Slow, ponderous, disconnected, like a marionette settling. "Happens." He gestured vaguely back towards the unseen highway with a heavy wrench. The route. She gets peckish sometimes. A memory surfaced. My grandfather, trucker, refusing certain stretches after sunset. Some roads ain't just roads, he said, eyes distant. Some got appetites. I dismissed it as road fatigue. The mechanic's clouded eyes fixed on Chloe with uncomfortable intensity. His gaze lingered on the hollows beneath her cheekbones. Pulls him right off the asphalt, she does. The ones carrying weight. Closed fingers dug into my arm. Can you help? Tow truck. A sound scraped from his throat. A dry, rattling approximation of a chuckle. Tow truck won't help none. Not if the route's taken a fancy. You look towards the highway again. A flicker of recognition in those clouded eyes. She's particular. Ice traced my veins. What are you talking about? This stretch, she said, wiping grimy hands on an equally grimy rag, achieving nothing. They call it Echo Canyon. Not on your maps. He tapped his ear lightly. Things get thin here. The seam between what was and what is. His gesture encompassed the surrounding town. Folks stop, or they get stopped, and they settle. As he spoke, I became aware of others, emerging silently from the perfect houses, drifting onto porches, standing in doorways, sharing that vacant stare, moving with disjointed grace. Some wore clothes 50 years out of date. One woman in a thin hospital gown shivered despite the still air. Another clutched a small teddy bear, tears streaming continuously down hollow cheeks. They weren't just standing. They were positioned, angled subtly toward the earth, as if listening, waiting for instruction from below. The route notices, the mechanic continued, gaze drifting, especially folks carrying something heavy. His eyes locked onto Chloe again. Grief's got a resonance, draws the attention. This is insane, I whispered, but a cold dread recognized truth. Insanity's thinking highways are just concrete. His lips stretched into something like a smile, revealing teeth stained in oily black. Their veins, carrying things. He seemed to listen for a moment. Some feed, some collect. Chloe stiffened. The rhythm, she whispered. I feel it inside my head now. The mechanic nodded, his movements suddenly smoother, synchronizing. The pulse, you feel it, don't you? He pressed a filthy hand against his chest. Thump thump, pause. His eyes took on an unnatural shine. The rote's voice, whispering. And I did hear it now, not just felt, a low-frequency vibration from my own bones, as if it had always been there. Indistinct impressions formed in the pulse. Stay, rest, belong. What is this place? Chloe breathed, gaze fixed on a woman across the street, gaunt, hollow-cheeked, eyes lost. Dear God, the resemblance to Chloe's mother in the final weeks was sickeningly real. Rest stop, the mechanic said, lips pulling back further, learned and not felt. For the ones the route holds onto, we keep things tidy. Wait. Wait for what? My voice cracked. For incorporation, he said. The word clinical, chilling. His face seemed to shimmer, like heat haze, something shifting beneath. The watchers rippled subtly in unison. Your thoughts, fears, your grief. It all contributes, stabilizes things. His voice dropped lower. She's ancient, older than the road, older than the trails. Been gathering since before wheels. He gestured at the townsfolk. Some are echoes, some are integrating. A woman with a jagged line across her throat stepped forward, movements fluid yet wrong. Her voice emerged not from her mouth, but seemingly from the ground. It's peaceful, no bills, no pain, no memory of the skid. She tilted her head impossibly. The route remembers. The mechanic turned back towards the garage's shadows. He glanced towards the highway, then specifically at where a U-Haul sat, unseen but known. He didn't speak, but his clouded eyes held a questioning look, a subtle inclination of his head towards the trailer carrying the Civic. The implication hung heavy in the dead air. Lighten the load, maybe? Mad miss. But the alternative, staying here, becoming a vacant echo. I felt a sudden, overwhelming compulsion, a desperate gamble. Okay, I stammered. The car. Well, leave the car. Before I could second guess, I was turning back. As we turned, his hand shot out, clamping onto my wrist, cold as deep earth, dry, papery, where he touched. Faint, dark lines pulsed beneath my skin like ink in water, tracing my veins in complex patterns that throbbed with the rhythm. The route's got a taste now, he whispered, Breath-fetid, oil, metal, damp earth. Leaves a mark. Understand? I ripped my arm free, hard hammering. The lines receded, but a cold foreignness remained, circulating. Chloe, let's go. We practically ran back up the dirt track, the silence amplifying my frantic pulse, the unseen rhythm seeming to throb louder. Behind us, the town and its residents remained, motionless sentinels, outlines fraying slightly at the edges, blurring into the dark. My hands shook unlocking the Civic, tossed the keys onto the seat. As I slammed the door, the sound loud, yet instantly swallowed. I swore I saw a flicker inside, a deepening shadow in the passenger seat, settling in, wearing the faintest suggestion of a face. My father's, gone when I blinked, a trick of moonlight and fear. Back in the U-Haul, air thick with terror, I jammed the key in, twisted. The engine roared to life, aggressively loud. No hesitation, slammed it into drive, floored it, tires spitting gravel onto the highway asphalt. I refused to look back, didn't dare check mirrors, but peripherally, a glimpse. The mechanic standing in the middle of Route 78, watching us recede. He raised one hand slowly, acknowledging, marking. Did that happen? Chloe whispered, trembling bleached white. Liam, his face, just before we got in. Did you see it shift? I hadn't dared look. Drive, I gritted out. Focus. Drive. We pushed the complaining U-Haul, but the highway felt elastic. We passed a uniquely twisted oak, then passed it again 10 minutes later. Mile markers counted down, then jumped back up. The dashboard clock flickered. 2:17 a.m., 2:17 a.m., 2:17 a.m. The feeling of being watched became invasive, a feeling of being digested. The radio clicked on, volume knob useless. Static flooded the cab, thick, choking, smelling faintly of ozone and decay, and the pulse. Thump thump, pause. Thump thump, pause. Pressure, vibrating the steering wheel, resonating in my sternum, shaking my teeth. Whispers writhed within the static. Fragmented, sibilant, not direct accusations but echoes. Familiar voices, warped, running from like Trollus' mother's sigh, so hungry. A dry rasp like the mechanic's, stay with us. A chorus, hollow, the bills, fear, my own anxieties, twisted back. Mother's echo, a weeping sound, taste lingers. Chloe whimpered, hands over ears. Make it stop, Liam, please. Hammering the radio was futile. The whispers sharpened, weaving our rawest emotions into the static tapestry. The root wasn't just listening, it was sampling, archiving. Beside me, Chloe went rigid. Her head turned, slowly, unnaturally smoothly, until she faced me. Her eyes seemed filmed over, reflecting dead dashboard lights like polished stones. It's inside now, Liam, she said, and the voice was a grotesque overlay. Her pitch, the mechanic's rasp, the wet static hiss. The route, it likes this place. Her gaze drifted downwards towards her own lap. It shows. Her face began to waver, less shifting, more like a faulty projection. Flashes of the mechanic's lines. The vacant townspeople's stare, a horrifying glimpse of her mother's final emaciation. Then, impossibly, a flash of my father's features, a man Chloe never met, the face from the Civic's shadow. Ahead, the road shimmered, distorting like extreme heat haze. Asphalt seemed to liquefy, white lines writhing. The truck veered sharply, the wheel fighting me with intelligent force. It's pulling us back, I screamed as Chloe's hand clamped onto mine, inhumanly strong, cold as the mechanic's touch. Through the wavering mirage, shapes resolved. Tall, gaunt figures. Dozens. Standing stock still, faces indistinct blurs of static, all oriented towards us. The townsfolk. The mechanic at their head. Waiting. Welcoming. Among them my breath hitched. A woman with Chloe's mother's posture. A man with my father's slump. Collected echoes. And worse, a figure with my own stance. Watching our approach with patient hunger. The U-Haul surged. Accelerating uncontrollably, drawn towards the assembly. Brake pedals solid, useless. The pulse from the radio reached a deafening crescendo, shaking the cab violently. Thump, thump, thump. Thump, 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 thump. It wants us, I yelled. Beside me, Chloe's face contorted. We can rest here, Liam, grated that composite voice. All the pieces gathered, makes us whole again. She gestured vaguely to her stomach. Make space. Then a flicker. Behind the cloudy film, Trolley's true eyes, terrified, fighting. Blind panic, primal survival. I wrenched the wheel, aiming not for the road, but the ditch, the tree line, anywhere off the asphalt. The thing wearing closed face shrieked, oscillating between human anguish and electronic feedback. Metal screamed. The unseen trailer jackknifed. Steel groaned. Glass imploded. We hit the soft shoulder, jarring every bone, then plowed headlong into the dark woods. Branches exploded like gunshots. A vortex of green and black, then silence slammed down. Else. I woke hanging upside down, held by the seatbelt. Cab crumpled. Acrid gasoline. Crushed pine. Beside me, Chloe moaned. Alive. Her eyes, fluttering open, were hers. Clear. Human. Terrified. Distant sirens grew closer. Real sirens. They found us near dawn, tangled 20 miles off Route 78, deep down an embankment. No tracks led from the highway. U-Haul totaled. The trailer and Civic vanished. Gone. Troopers exchanged baffled looks. One veteran, silvering hair, kept glancing back at the highway with an expression I recognized. Unease. Like he knew something but wouldn't say it. As they loaded Chloe into the ambulance, I noticed something. Each paramedic, each officer, their movements occasionally synced, just for a beat. A collective pause, a rhythm. Thump thump pause. We told them to lie, swerved for a deer, lost control. What else? Chloe fractured collarbone, concussion, shock. Me cracked ribs, bruises, stitches. In the hospital, a nurse changed clothes at 2:17 a.m. The drip pulsed with her monitor. Thump thump. Pause. When I pointed, she smiled, eyes vacant for a second, and told me to rest. The intake forms had glitches in the timestamps, strange formatting errors around Route 78. We made it to Ohio, eventually. Cramped apartments, soul-crushing jobs. Assembling a fresh start from broken pieces. We never speak of that night. The town, the mechanic, the whispers, the price. But the silence here is thin. Late at night, city hum low. I feel it. Faint, rhythmic thrumming, deep background noise. Thump thump, pause, thump thump, pause. Sometimes I feel it in my healed ribs, a phantom vibration. Sometimes fleeting movement at vision's edge, tall, gaunt, gone, textures shimmer. Construction pile drivers sometimes sync perfectly for one beat too many. Ice floods my veins. Maps. Satellite images of Route 78. Sometimes a suggestion in the terrain. A vast shape, articulated. The highway a vein, feeding something ancient. Patient. Blink. It's gone. Chloe feels it too. I see it. She freezes, head cocked, listening. Eyes glaze over, reflecting something unseen. Murmurs in sleep, voice raspy, low, not quite hers. And my dreams back in that pristine dead town. Walking immaculate streets among silent watchers. Waiting. The mechanic leans against his workbench, wiping endless grease. That dead smile. Told you, he rasps, filling my sleeping mind. Nothing ever really leaves the route clean. I wake tasting engine oil and grave dirt. We escaped. We left the offering. But the road didn't just want the car. It got a taste. Sampled our static. Fear. Grief. Planted an echo. A seed. Last week Chloe confirmed it. Pregnant. Against odds. Against doctors' predictions. There on the grainy ultrasound. A tiny flicker. Nascent heartbeat. Thump thump. Pause. Clear on the monitor. Perfectly in time with the rhythm in my bones. The technician performing it. Her eyes. Just a moment. Clouded. Her voice. Briefly static tinge. Whispered. Strong rhythm for this stage. The area seems pleased. She remembered nothing when I questioned her frantically. The printout of the scan seems slightly blurry around the edges, almost vibrating. Sometimes I feel unseen eyes looking back, from shadows, maps, the ink itself, listening, waiting. It remembers us. Thump thump, pause. It knows where we are. Thump thump, pause. And I feel it growing stronger, nearer, coming to collect. Last night I woke. Chloe stood at the window, staring towards the distant interstate, hand absently stroking her still flat stomach. She turned, eyes catching the streetlight, clouded, milky, unfocused. "It's calling us home, Liam," she whispered, voice layered with static. "It misses us. It needs what's growing." Her other hand, pressed against the glass, left a smear. Not fingerprints. A map. The exact route from here back to that stretch of 78. Directions written in condensation on a warm night. By morning she remembered nothing. Just tired, she said. In researching, Echo Canyon, hungry roads, thin places, old forums, electrical failures, missing time, strange towns, on PA highways, obscure journals, native warnings about paths where the land itself hungers, where echoes gather. I don't know what's growing inside Chloe, if it's ours anymore, but we can't stay still. Yesterday, car keys rearranged on the counter, outline of Pennsylvania. Today, GPS rewrote every destination through Route 78, won't clear. Tonight, writing this, a truck idles outside, U-Haul, no driver visible. I've looked at the bedroom doorway 3 times while writing this. Each time, Chloe stood there briefly watching, except the third time it wasn't quite Chloe. The silhouette was wrong, too tall, the proportions stretched. In its hand, dangling, a set of keys. The idle truck outside revved once, in perfect time with the pulse in my wrist. Thump thump, pause. I'm going to the window now. The U-Haul's back doors are open. I can see something inside, a shadow, person-shaped, beckoning. It's standing in front of what looks like our Civic. Impossible. The shadow has my father's posture. Behind it, more shadows, waiting. The keys on my desk just moved, by themselves, pointing to the door. It wants us back, or rather, it wants what it started in us. I hear Chloe in the bathroom, running water, humming something arrhythmic that periodically syncs with the pulse. Thump thump, pause. I should run, but where? The route is patient. It has mapped every artery of this country, and now it's mapped us. Thump thump, pause. Thump thump, pause. We found a dog chained in a cemetery. This happened 3 months ago, a couple of nights after my fiancé Dustin proposed to me. We were snuggled on the couch with a VCR setup, watching old tapes. Our house was on a corner lot, and across the road was an Anglican church with a small unfenced cemetery and a rusted swing set. Around 10:30 p.m., we were interrupted by a dog barking hysterically, a squeaky yip-yip bark. Normally I would have ignored it. I'd lived in dog-friendly neighborhoods where one bark set off 6, but Dustin and I were planning to adopt a kid within the year and couldn't afford to lose sleep. I stepped outside. The cold nipped at my skin and my breath spilled out in ragged clouds. Mayfield was particularly icy that season, and I didn't want to be outside for long. It went dead silent, not even a car passing by. The kind of quiet that pressed against your ears. That's when the howling started again. First a yelp, then a sharp series of bark 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 like 2 dogs fighting for the last bite of food. Dustin had stepped out onto the front porch. It's over there in the cemetery. Now I love the man, but he has a bad habit of sending me into trouble because I'm a big guy with a beard. I'd never even been in a fight. Still, I jogged across the road. The rusted chains of the swing creaked in the wind, and beneath them, a small shivering chihuahua was chained to one of the posts. I knelt down and offered my hand. "Hey buddy, where's your owner?" The chihuahua lowered its head and sniffed my hand, seeming to calm down. "You're not so bad, are you?" Then I heard something behind me, like someone walking through the leaves. When I turned, something ducked behind a gravestone. Only a pair of eyes peered over the top, staring at me. For a moment I stood frozen, looking at the figure and looking at me and the dog pulling against the chain and whining madly. The figure then rose to his feet and started taking several steps toward me. His face and nude body were painted black as if he'd rubbed on charcoal from a campfire, and there was a large gash from his right collarbone down to his left nipple. In his hand he held a serrated steak knife. Dustin must have heard the commotion and was walking over to join me. "Go back. Get back inside," I yelled at him. "Call the police." "Why? Is it a big dog?" "Just call the fucking police." Dustin pulled out his cell and started dialing. I tried to back away from the man, keeping my eyes on him. I took slow steps back. He mimicked me, carefully stepping closer and closer. I readied myself to fight. He was a scrawny man, and I had size on my side. The police would take at least 10 minutes to get here. The chihuahua belted out bark after bark. The man was about 10 meters away, and then suddenly he was sprinting. I heard it before I saw him, the harsh puffs of his breath. I ran too, yelling at Dustin, who was still dawdling outside. The man was catching up, and not just that, he was passing me. He was trying to cut me off and beat me to the door. Dustin's eyes went wide as he staggered inside. The door slammed shut behind him. My heart hammered as I raced down the side of the house. We always locked the patio door, but I prayed Dustin had the same idea as I did. The man leaped over the porch railing, mere meters behind. I rounded the corner, and there was Dustin standing at the patio door. "Oh my God, Jason. Jason," he yelled, grabbing my arm and hauling me inside, sliding the door shut. There was a thud as the man banged into the glass. We both backed up. Dustin was yelling into the phone. "He's trying to get in our house now. Tell them to hurry up." The man was just standing there on the other side of the glass, watching us. I noticed then that he had gnarly, twisted ears that, with his bald head, made him look like some sort of gangly orc. He took the steak knife and started sawing another sheet of flesh off his chest. I felt bile rise in my throat, and Dustin drew the curtain shut. Part of me wanted to run, to put as much ground between me and that thing, but his feet disappeared from under the patio door curtains, and he could have been hiding anywhere. We checked our other windows. For a second I thought I saw light flit in our living room, like the curtains moved, and then it was gone. Dustin was by the front door. "They're here. I see them coming down our street now." "About time," I said, joining him. We greeted the cops at their car. I explained what had happened, how it started with the dog, and why I was at the graveyard. However, they looked skeptical. "Look, you two guys are," said one of the officers, Harka, as he tilted his hand back and forth. "Are you sure you don't just scare easy?" "Certain." The officers walked around the side of the house and inspected the patio door, sliding it open and closed. Other than a slight smudge on the glass, all they found was some dirt on our hardwood floor. Harkis studied the dirt closely. "And the doors were locked?" he asked. "Of course," Dustin snapped. "Do you really think I wouldn't lock the doors? Jason was outside too. His shoes are filthy." "Then you must have unlocked it after we got here. Otherwise, how did we open it from the outside just now?" Yes, I did." Officer Harka scribbled in his notebook. I gestured toward the cemetery, inviting him to come with me. "Let me show you the dog." Just the two of us walked over, the wind building to a soft howl. The swing set creaked in the dark. The chain lay loose on the ground, the manacle that had been around the dog's neck tinged red. The poor thing must have ripped its head back through the hole. Hark knelt to inspect it, then turned his flashlight toward me. "Okay, so there was a dog. But without a chip, it's unlikely. Well." His flashlight flickered toward our house, as he took a moment to scan behind me. "Unlikely well find anyone. I'm sorry, I don't recall you mentioning anyone else was in the house tonight." "That's right. It's only Dustin and I." Hark fumbled with the radio clipped to his belt. "Morgan, potential suspect on the second floor. Wait for me." We ran back over and the officers did another walkthrough of the house. More muddy footprints were found upstairs, but the man was gone. When I tell this story, Dustin swears he locked the patio door, but he turns away from me, frustrated we're lingering on the subject. Grandma came home. Grandma came home last night. I was 10 when Grandma had her stroke. The doctors were surprised she survived, and she spent the rest of her life in bed. Strangely enough, it was only just last year that she started to show some improvement. She was able to sit up, her speech was less slurred, and there was a light in her eyes that I hadn't seen. She got sick. We live strange lives. We want to believe there is a purpose to it all. We want to believe things will work out in the end. It is why we love stories. They are the little fantasies we tell ourselves to cope with the unbearable truth of reality. We lie to ourselves because if we admitted the truth, we would all commit suicide. What is the truth? The truth is that good people can live good lives and still be punished. My grandma spent the last years of her life as an invalid, lying in a stuffy room with a tube in her guts because the stroke took away her ability to eat. She had to lay in her own shit until someone changed her diaper like a baby. She suffered indignities no one should have to suffer, but she went through them with a morbid optimism that baffled my parents. I understood though. If you had to go through hell, you might as well go through it with a smile on your face, because it is going to suck either way. My grandma wanted to watch me graduate from high school. I have no way of knowing, but I believed her health had started to improve because I graduate next year. Through sheer force of will, she was determined to get stronger, strong enough to sit in a wheelchair and leave the house. Grandma lived with us after the stroke. Grandpa died from a heart attack not long after I was born, and we could not afford to keep Grandma in a home. I would sit with her and read aloud whatever book I was currently obsessed with so she could enjoy it with me. She couldn't talk very well, barely more than slurred whispers, but I got to where I could understand most of it, and most of what she said was how proud she was of me. She said it tickled her to death that I loved to read and that I was so smart, and how she wanted to be there when I finished school. It was almost an obsession with her, and though I knew I wasn't as smart as she thought I was, I didn't want to let her down. So I worked hard to get the best grades I could for her and somehow managed to pass with a high enough GPA to get accepted into college. Grandma cried when she saw my acceptance letter, and I cried with her. I remember that was when she told me that she was going to be at my graduation, even if she had to force my dad to carry her on his back. I think it was the strain that she put on herself to get better that caused her second stroke. This time there was no luck, and she laid in the hospital for 3 days before she finally passed. Her left hand, already dead from the first stroke, was drawn up like a hook, frozen against her chest. The rest of her face became as slack as the left side of her mouth was. Her eyes which had just gotten back that lively spark, became dead and glazed. I broke down when I saw her in the hospital room after she passed. My dad sitting next to her and weeping openly, my mom by his side, her eyes misty as she held his hand. I felt nothing when I returned home and entered her empty room. I would say I was numb, in shock, but in truth, there is nothing which can describe the emptiness I felt as I sat next to her bed. On the little table where I kept books to read, a battered copy of Stephen King's Skeleton Crew sat open, page down. Grandma loved Stephen King. She was a regular horror junkie, just like me. I picked up the book and saw we were about to read the story, Survivor Type. I started to read, and as the story unfolded in my mind, tears began to fall, wetting the pages in big salty splotches. I was weeping by the time I finished the story, though not because I felt sorry for the guy stuck on the island. I could care less about that guy, though I thought if Grandma was here she would have gotten a chuckle at the brutal way he died. She always had a morbid sense of humor. I closed the book and laid it back on the table, then I noticed my father watching me from the doorway. We said nothing, he just walked to me, and I stood, and we held each other and cried. Mother, grandmother, friend. It does not matter what we called her, we both missed her deeply. That night I lay in bed and tried my best not to think about Grandma. I scrolled through TikTok on my phone, watching one mindless video after another, in hopes of losing myself in it, but always in the back of my mind the fact of Grandma's death waited, biding its time to pounce back to the forefront at a moment's weakness. I fell asleep sometime after 1 in the morning, but it was fleeting and fitful, and I awoke only a few hours later. It was then that I saw my grandma floating outside my window. She was floating, my room was on the 2nd floor, and I could see her sort of bobbing around in the air. She wore a white dress, and she looked like how I remembered her when I was a kid, before her first stroke. I forgot how beautiful she used to be, and my eyes welled with tears as she floated through the wall into my room. She landed on the floor with bare feet, and for the first time in almost a decade I saw my grandma walk. She moved with ethereal grace towards me, and I sat up in bed and held out a hand to her. I was so overwhelmed with emotions that I was unable to speak. She smiled and reached out her own hand, taking mine. She felt soft and warm, though sort of watery like a loose skein of silk. She did not talk. I am still unsure if she was even able to, but she didn't need to. I could feel her love for me radiating out and covering me like a blanket. I knew in that moment that it was okay, that though death may separate us for a time, there is an afterwards, there is a forever in which we would meet again. Then the coldness washed through, and I saw my grandma's smile turn to fear. She stepped back and looked around, her curly hair whipping around her neck. I looked too and noticed that the shadows in my room were moving. They moved across the floor like water and surrounded my grandma, who stood with wide eyes, her hands pulled to her face in unbridled fear. The shadows grew and piled up from the floor until they were towered over her. They swirled around formless for a moment, then shaped into 5 black figures standing around Grandma. She looked from them to me, then mouthed a single word. Sorry. The shadows moved as one to grab her, then lifted her above them. I could see Grandma writhing in pain, her mouth contorting in soundless screams. The black figures collapsed to the ground like water and dragged Grandma down into their blackness. The soft glow of her essence lingered above the blackness for a moment, then faded away. The shadows dissipated, and I was alone in my room once more. Death is not the end. I know that now, and I know that somewhere in the far reaches of reality there is a hell. Somewhere within that hell, my grandma burns within black flames in an endless darkness, her existence nothing more than pain and anguish. I do not know if there is a heaven. I do not know if when I die the shadows will come for me. I pray that it isn't so. I pray for heaven. I pray for my grandma's soul. Does anybody hear me? My classroom keeps moving. I'm not sure how much longer I can pretend I'm okay. Okay, so I've been an instructor at my university for a couple years now while working towards a doctorate in philosophy, a subject that requires, if not some semblance of sanity, at least a general grasp on reality. I've spent most of my life surrounded by books, papers, and students, so I like to think I've always been somewhat grounded, until now. It started about 2 months ago. On a normal Tuesday, I walked into my classroom, room 202, second floor of the building, same as always. I fixed the lights, logged into the computer, and prepared for my usual lecture. I have about 26 students in that class, and as usual, they all sat down, took out their notebooks, and started chatting before class was to begin. I never thought anything of it when I left at the end of the session. I packed my things, logged out of the computer, walked out of the classroom, and went home. Just another day. But the next morning, I came back to campus to find that something was off. When I reached the second floor, I immediately noticed something strange. Room 202 was gone. The hallway didn't look right. I checked the door numbers. Room 201, room 203, but there was no room 202. Thinking I'd just missed it, I retraced my steps. Maybe the doors had been rearranged for some reason. But as I walked through the building, I realized something even stranger. None of the other rooms seemed to be in the right place either. The layout of the hallway was different, the walls a little too close together, and the windows at odd angles. I even checked my phone to confirm that my class was always scheduled on the second floor, but when I turned the corner, there was no room 202. I panicked, of course. I thought I'd somehow lost my bearings, maybe had a momentary lapse in memory. So I took a deep breath, walked upstairs to my office, and told my office mate what happened. She stared at me like I had lost my mind. Understandably, "Room 202, she asked. "But you've been in that room all semester." I followed her to the second floor, where sure enough, room 202 was right where it should have been. Everything was exactly as it always was. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I'd walked through a different part of the building without realizing it. It was a mistake. One of those things that makes you wonder if you've been working too hard. No big deal. But then the same thing happened again the next week, and the week after that. Every time I left the classroom at the end of a session, when I returned the next day, the layout of the building would change. Room 202 would be gone, and I'd have to walk around the building, retracing my steps, trying to figure out where it had moved. Every single time, my office mate would walk me down the hallway to show me that room 202 was there, exactly where it was supposed to be. I'd stand there dumbfounded, feeling the walls close in around me, wondering if I was going insane. And the worst part, the students noticed. One of them, a quiet girl, approached me after class one day. She's the kind of student who blends into the background, so I didn't think much of it at first when she asked if I was okay. "You've been acting different," she said, her voice quiet but sharp in my memory. "You seem distracted lately, and you keep looking at the walls like they're closing in on you." I remember laughing it off, telling her I was just tired, but her words stuck with me. Was I acting differently? Was I imagining things? The days after that became harder to bear. I began to notice small inconsistencies at first, things that might be dismissed as simply a normal change or an overlooked detail. A poster on the wall that wasn't there before, a mounted whiteboard that had been moved. Sometimes all the desks in the room would be moved to face the back wall when they are normally positioned to face the projector screen. But then things began to escalate. One day, I entered the classroom and the walls themselves were all wrong. The doors were set in different places. The windows had changed. I felt an immediate sense of vertigo, like I just wasn't in the same room anymore. The layout was different, but the students were sitting in the same places as usual. They all looked confused too. "Professor?" One of them spoke up. This isn't where we were last time. Is this the wrong room?" I stood there, unable to speak. My throat was dry. I wanted to say something, but I couldn't form the words. Instead, I grabbed the door handle and stepped right back into the hallway, heart pounding. But when I turned back to look at the classroom, it was the same as always. Room 202. No mistakes, no oddities, just another day. And yet, every time I left the room, the layout changed. I was sure of it. I tried to ignore it. I couldn't afford to lose my job, to let anyone know I was losing my mind. But every day it got worse. The room shifted when I wasn't looking. Hallways got narrower. The angles of the doors became impossibly sharp. The windows looked into different spaces, into places I didn't recognize. And the students started whispering behind my back. Then one day I caught that same quiet girl standing near the back of the classroom, staring at the door. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the door like it had suddenly grown eyes. "Professor," she said slowly, "are you sure this is our classroom?" I went over to the door, and for the first time I realized something that made my stomach drop. The door had no number on it, no label, no room 202. That's when I lost it. I can't explain what happened next, but I know it felt like my mind was unraveling, like something inside me snapped. I tried to leave the building, but the stairwell seemed endless. It looped back on itself, like a bad dream I couldn't escape. The doors refused to open. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, with no way out. 'Tis been a week since then, and I'm still here, still teaching. The students are still taking their same seats, their faces blurring together. They sit, they listen, they ask questions, but I can't shake the feeling that everything is wrong, that the classroom isn't where it should be. And now I'm afraid to leave, because when I walk out, I'm terrified nothing will ever be where it should be again. Dumpster diving. When my parents kicked me out of home at 18, I'd already been promoted to store manager at our local 7-Eleven. The money wasn't great, but I was frugal and had saved enough to rent a room in a shitty red brick apartment block. Our facilities were shared: a kitchen, 2 laundry machines, and 4 toilets. There were a lot of awkward encounters, and we all knew each other by name. Behind the building we had a general waste area with 2 skip bins, locked behind a shutter door that we opened with a fob. I was taking out my trash one night, key fob ready, but the shutter door was open. The building was old, and things were always breaking, so I thought nothing of it. I was about to open the skip bin lid when I noticed a light shining from inside. Someone was in there, shuffling around in the rubbish. I could hear them chewing and eating. Times were hard, and it wasn't uncommon to find people scavenging the bins for discarded food. I quietly left my trash bag on the ground in the garbage area and walked away. It must be humiliating enough to dig through rubbish, and I didn't want to make them feel embarrassed. We're all just trying to get by. As I was heading back inside, one of my neighbors, a middle-aged woman named Miriam, was looking around outside and calling out, "Bella." Bella was the name of her small Pomeranian. The dog was well-behaved and very friendly, always walking up to anyone and rolling on its belly for pats. I approached cautiously. "Excuse me, do you need any help?" "I'm fine, thanks," she replied. Then, as if realizing her tone might have sounded too harsh, she added, "Dave, you remember my ex-husband Dave? He stopped by to collect his clothes, but the idiot left the door open and now Bella got out." I did remember Dave. The apartment walls were thin, and I twice thought about calling the cops when the shouting matches got out of hand. "I'm sorry to hear. Maybe once it's light out, she'll know her surroundings better and come home. I'll keep an eye out." "Thanks, Curtis." I trudged up the stairs to my unit, my mind heavy with the day's disquiet, seeking to dull the creeping anxiety. I lit a joint, an attempt at calm that felt woefully inadequate. As I exhaled slowly, the persistent clamor from the skip bins reminded me how I could very easily have been in the same situation myself. The next night I stayed late to cover a coworker's shift and stumbled home exhausted. Miriam was chatting with one of the older ladies, Helena, as they waited for the laundry cycles to finish. Their noses were scrunched up, and they seemed to be looking around for something. "What's up? Is there a gas leak?" I asked. Helena pointed to a vent near the ceiling. "We think something died in there, maybe a rat." I stepped closer. The stench was overwhelming. God, that's awful. I've already logged it with maintenance, not that they'll show up anytime soon. Miriam sighed. I'm still waiting on them to get back to me about the skip bin door. I wanted to ask Miriam if she'd found Bella, but it was past 10 p.m. and I knew I'd get caught in a long-winded chat, so I excused myself. After eating a quick microwave dinner, I noticed some expired fruit in the back fridge. I didn't want it to rot and stink up my apartment, so I took it directly to the skip bins out back. As Miriam had mentioned, the shutter doors were still stuck open, and there was the smell, thick wafts of something like off meat. Maybe that's why I paid more attention. Someone had unscrewed the bolts at the top of the shutter door so it would hit them and not close. Making a mental note to follow up on that, I opened the skip bin to throw out my trash. Immediately, the smell hit me. It was so bad my eyes stung and watered. I looked inside. Bones. Lots of them. Vertebrae. A rib cage. A small skull with sharp canines and fur still on the muzzle. Bits of rotting flesh and hair clung to them. I reeled back, wanting to throw up. What on earth had happened to that poor thing? It was hard to make out what animal it was, but it looked like a small house pet of some sort. I couldn't leave it like this. I went to call management, but then something silver and shiny caught my eye, a dog collar with a name engraved. "Bella, here girl," Miriam shouted from the front door. My thumb hesitated over the call button. Maybe it was for the best that Bella wasn't found. At least then, Miriam could hold on to the hope that Bella had escaped to somewhere better rather than remain in a place where everything was rotting away. My best friend stole a cursed crystal. Now she's gone, and someone or something else has her face. We were just two art students crafting costumes for Comic-Con until my best friend stole a strange red crystal to cosplay the Dirt Witch, a local legend known for vengeance and blood. Now she's missing, and something wearing her face won't stop staring at me. When you study costume design, you live for moments like this, being invited to the exclusive Witches of Salem party during Comic-Con, hosted by the Queen herself, BB West. Andrea and I thought we'd nailed it, our best cosplay yet. This was going to be the party that got us seen, maybe even launched our careers. Andrea chose the Dirt Witch, a local legend from German Flats, our hometown area in the Mohawk Valley. I went full fire-scorched Puritan. We'd both been dreaming of this kind of career since high school in Ilion, and now we were studying art together at Pratt Munson in Utica. Cosplay wasn't just a hobby, it was our escape plan. We scored the perfect rags and lace at the old thrift store in Ilion. Andrea even smeared hers with real mud for that extra cursed vibe, but the real showstopper was in my attic. We were digging through my grandma's old theater stuff. She taught drama at Ilion High back in the day and kept everything playbills from the 50s, rusty-smelling makeup kit, piles of costume jewelry. There were also boxes of old Shakespearean props and handmade accessories. That's when I found it. A small, hand-carved box, black wood, weathered and soft as old leather. I held it while Andrea unlatched it. Inside was a red crystal, nestled in faded velvet. When the light hit it through the attic window, it looked like fire trapped in ice. "I have to wear this for the Dirt Witch," Andrea said. "No way," I told her. "I need to ask my mom. It could be real. I mean, it's definitely not plastic." "So what if it is?" she said. "Come on, just look at it." I frowned. "Leave it for now." She rolled her eyes. "Mama's boy." She nodded like she was letting it go. She wasn't. That evening, we hiked into the Ilion Gorge for a photo shoot. Andrea looked terrifying, hair matted with dirt, eyes hollow like Shed clawed her way out of a grave. She held up the crystal and grinned. "You took it? It's just costume jewelry, Brady. Relax." I lunged, tripped in my boots, and slammed into the ground. She laughed hard. I was done. Shed crossed a line. Not just with me, but with my mom and with the memory of my grandmother. I stormed back toward the car, fuming. Then I remembered the crystal. If I went home without it, my mom would kill me. As I turned back, I heard her scream. I froze. It sounded real, too real. I shouted her name again and again. No answer. I found the ruins of an old stone house deep in the trees. Her voice drifted out, weak, trembling. "Brady, help me." I crept in. Moonlight spilled through the rotting roof. Shadows stretched like fingers. In the center, Andrea dangled in the grip of something black and dripping, mud-covered limbs, hair like pondweed, and a skull for a face. "Give it to me," it rasped, voice like wind over broken glass. Andrea sobbed and handed over the glowing crystal. The Dirt Witch dropped her into a dark pit in the floor. I should have moved, screamed, done something, but I couldn't. I crouched in the corner, frozen, as the witch hovered above the hole. The crystal pulsed, red, then brighter, until Andrea's scream was cut short and her body twisted into smoke, sucked into the gem. The witch and the crystal vanished. Silence. Fog coiled through the moonlight like fingers. The smell of mildew, rot, and leather hung in the air. I stayed hidden for hours, shaking, crying. I told no one. Who would believe me? Now I sleep with the lights on. I wake in cold sweats. I know the Dirt Witch story all too well now. How she was lynched in the 1880s by the Morgans after stealing a rare red Herkimer diamond. How they tied her to a horse and dragged her through German flats until she was nothing but blood, bones, and dirt. How she haunts the Ilian Gorge, searching for her stone and revenge. She plagues my waking thoughts. I feel her in my dreams at night, watching me. But now when I picture the Dirt Witch's face, it isn't a skull anymore. It's Andreas. I keep hearing her words, "Give it to me." And I keep wondering, why did my grandma have that crystal? And when will the Dirt Witch come looking for me? That's it for tonight's stories, but the nightmares never end. If you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new upload. Got a scary experience of your own? Share it in the comments. I just might feature it in a future video. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember some things are scarier than they seem in the dark.